Ready? Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 6:30 and I'd like to call the regular council meeting for Monday, December 11th to order. We respectfully acknowledge that the city of Colwood lies within the traditional territories of Lekwungen-speaking people, the Kasepsum and Songhees nations. We thank them for sharing these lands in peace and friendship. Item 2, approval of the agenda. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the near-term agenda, please? Thank you, Councillor Jordison and Councillor Olson. Any discussion? Seeing none. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Mayor's message. I've got two messages tonight. The first one is at the last council meeting, we had a presentation by the CRD on the proposed CRD water DCCs for our future water supply. And I think it was safe to say that the meeting didn't go that positive for them. And in all fairness, no one around this table actually sat at the table 2 years ago at the CRD. And so we didn't really know what the history behind it all was. We just had a presentation and they dropped a bomb and said, we're going to charge you a lot of DCCs. And of course, we all got pretty upset around the council table here. But since that time, Mr. Earl, CAO, and I joined all the West Shore mayors and the CAOs from the West Shore. And we had a presentation last Thursday by the CAO of the CRD, Mr. Ted Robbins. And it was because of what happened here and another council, I guess it was all the same. And we got the true story behind it all, the whole background information. And it certainly made me rethink my position at the time. So I just wanted to bring this out at this point in time because things were said that were, based on what we thought were facts. And in fact, when we got more information, I just was going to ask council just to refrain from saying anything until they get this presentation. And we're trying to make those arrangements for them to have a presentation or put it on video. It's an eye opener to the reasons why this has to be done, whether we like it or not. The costs, okay, they may be debatable, but the reasons why it has to be done is they've got a good foundation and why. So I just wanted to bring that out because we certainly hit the news. And I just want to clarify that. Secondly, I would like to pause to deliver a brief Christmas message. This is our last council meeting before the Christmas break. And I was reflecting over the past year, and I could tell you it has been just an extreme privilege for me to serve as mayor of this really amazing city. And I'm saying that heartfelt. It's truly been an honor and pleasure to work with fellow council members. We at first I was kind of worried because we were all voting the same, and I was going, oh, this is not a good thing. But it was we started seeing the split votes, and the great thing about this council that I find is that we may disagree around the table here, but we'll go out and we'll enjoy each other's company after. So I really, really like that about this council. I would also like to thank the remarkable staff here. It's funny when you're a citizen, it's very easy to criticize your city staff, but I can tell you, believe me, that they're hardworking and dedicated folks here in City Hall. And I thank Mr. Earl for his leadership, and it's just a phenomenal staff here. I have nothing but admiration for the staff here. I thought I've worked in good companies before, but this is a pretty solid staff here. So thank you very much, Mr. Earl. And last of all, of course, I'd like to thank the community members. I mean, we had so many people volunteering for all our citizen committees, far too many citizens for a few positions. And it's been amazing. The community members have really participated. I see that. I noticed it in our council meetings. We get a lot more participation. And I see Miss Brown out there, and she's always here. And so I would like to, wish every councillor, city staff, community members, and your families a happy holiday filled with warmth, joy, and shared moments of goodwill. Together, let's continue to work towards the betterment of our community in the upcoming year. Thank you very much. At this point in time, I will look for a mover and seconder for the minutes of the regular council meeting held on November 27th. Thank you, Councillor Day and Councillor Jensen. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none. All those in, any opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. Public participation, item 4. So item 5, I should say. We had 13 written submissions that were appended to the agenda, and we have 23 submissions that were received after the cutoff. And they'll be attached to the agenda tomorrow. I must admit 83% of the submissions, of the written submissions, were on item 8.1 of tonight's agenda regarding zero carbon step code. So I'm going to open the floor right now for members of the public. You're going to be given an opportunity to present your concerns or questions. You'll be given 2 minutes. There's a new light system up there. It's green, amber, and red. Amber, it's a 1 minute left, and I think red, you're going to be cut off. No, not really, but so we have one person online, I believe, and can I just have a show of hands how many people want to speak tonight? Okay, so yeah, I'm going to have to limit you to 2 minutes then, definitely to 2 minutes. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jane Devonshire, and I'm coming to you as a friendly next door neighbor in View Royal, and also as chair of the South Island Climate Action Network. We would like to warmly invite Colwood to join our family of zero carbon municipalities that have embraced the implementation of the EL4 Zero Carbon Step Code. As residents of View Royal, Victoria, Saanich, Central Saanich, and Esquimalt, we are immensely proud of our councils for their bold leadership. They are walking the talk by putting the brakes on our GHG emissions from new builds. We hope that the residents of Colwood will soon be able to enjoy the same benefits too. For starters, we are very grateful that we have caring leadership that is looking after the health and welfare of our residents. It is so reassuring to know that our residents can now look forward to having new homes that are built climate safe, resilient, and healthy. These homes will also be more affordable for both homeowners and renters, as their energy bills will be substantially reduced. They will also save on not having to install costly air conditioning to survive our heat waves. The icing on the cake is that heat pumps also filter out pollutants like wildfire smoke, so you can shelter safely and comfortably in your own home. And last but not least, thanks to our councils for future-proofing these homes from costly energy retrofits down the line. The Step Code Engagement Report that summarized the results of the consultations with 150 industry stakeholders states, regional consistency is a priority. To that end, the aforementioned municipalities are pulling together to achieve this, and if Colwood would join us, that would set us on an even stronger path to establishing this regional consistency and bring stability to both the industry and to the region. Businesses that get on board now with the transition will do very well in the future with the many job opportunities that this will create. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Devonshire. Next.
Carol Brown, Citizens Environment Network in Colwood. Scenic asks you to accept the recommendation of the Colwood Environmental Advisory Committee and adopt Level 4 of the Zero Carbon Step Code. The most recent Colwood Connector states that Colwood aims to be a leader in climate action by urgently reducing emissions. It is now the opportunity to make actions that will speak louder than words. The oil and gas industry will try to have us believe that our problems will be solved with renewable natural gas. RNG is derived from landfills and agriculture, but it is still methane and burns like a fossil fuel with all of its negative effects. It costs more than $20 to $30 a gigajoule to produce, and compared to natural gas at $4 a gigajoule. There is so little of it available that supplies will need to be sourced from outside British Columbia. Any RNG produced should be reserved for hard to electrify projects such as cement production. Currently, Fortis has less than 1% RNG and hopes to only reach 11% in 9 years. Right now, it would be mixed in with remaining 99% natural gas, and all customers will have to pay for the increase in cost. There are litigation efforts to hold the oil and gas industry accountable for misleading advertising and the greenwashing of RNG. RNG is not a low carbon gas. Its methane is more potent than CO2. It is only sourced differently. Another attempt to mislead the public is to state that our hydroelectric grid cannot accommodate increased demand. This has already been clearly explained to our previous council as not accurate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Doug? Oh, you got to press the button there, Doug.
Got it? Okay. Doug Willoughby, 3338 East Mink. Mayor and Council. Item 8.1, the zero carbon step code, I think is a good bylaw to pursue. And it's my considered opinion that it would go well with what Colwood talks about with their carbon footprint. So thank you. I hope you vote in favor for it.
Thanks so much, Doug.
Mayor, councilors, my name is Glenn Gary. I'm just up here tonight. I have a submission that's in writing. I only ended up here tonight because I started seeing some of the submissions that were coming in. Thought I'd tell you my little story. I came back with my family from a foreign posting in 2000, settled in Colwood, big 2,700 square foot house. I spent the next 14 years getting that thing upgraded. Insulation, windows, everything, including taking out the fossil fuel boiler that kept the place warm. Did all that. Payback for the removal, by the way, was 4 years. So that worked out really well. But when I retired in 2014, my wife and I wanted to downsize and get into a house that had no fossil fuels to start with. Colwood didn't have that at the time. I ended up having to move to Langford. So in Langford, I moved into a 2,000 square foot townhome. Everything's electric in it. It's got geothermal, hot water in-floor heating. I charge my electric car from it, all from a 125 amp panel. Now, Colwood moving towards EL4, I see from some of the submissions, people are saying that they have to pump up the panels to 200 or 400 amp. You talk to an actual electrical company that works with BC Hydro, they'll tell you that's not true. What they'll do is they'll do a study on your panel and see just how much you use over a time period. And most panels are only being used 40 to 50% of their maximum output. So that should not be one of the reasons to turn down EL4. That's all I got. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Len.
Judith Cullington, 3338 East Mink. Good evening. Welcome. I just wanted to add my voice to those who are saying, please do consider adopting the zero carbon step code. It's really important. Colwood has been a leader in the climate area for many years, and I hope you will continue. And on that, I wanted to wish you all a Merry Christmas.
Thanks very much, Judith. Carolyn.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I want to follow up on Mr. Gary's comments. I'm a relatively new person to Colwood. We lived in Metchosin for 26 years, and we've been spending the last 3 years renovating our new home to try and eliminate the fossil gas. So like everyone else, I want to encourage you to demonstrate to Colwood residents that protecting their health and well-being is a priority for you. Tonight, you'll decide whether Colwood should join other BC municipalities and accelerate the zero carbon energy step code. I hope you will endorse the motion because doing so also demonstrates climate leadership, which is the first pathway of the Colwood Climate Action Plan. So I've read all the correspondence And you have a job tonight to separate fact from fiction, science from opinion. And the science is crystal clear. We are in a climate emergency. It's caused by the burning of fossil fuels, primarily. The solution? Eliminate fossil fuels as quickly as possible and shift to renewable energy. LNG is fossil gas, mostly methane, considered to be 80 times more harmful than carbon dioxide. It leaks into the atmosphere at every stage of production and use. It harms the health of people and the planet. And no amount of lobbying, disinformation, or expensive greenwashing will change that. Buildings, along with transportation, are the highest sources of greenhouse gases in Colwood. So eliminating greenhouse gases from buildings is a key pathway of the Colwood Climate Action Plan. Colwood is rapidly developing, and passing this motion tonight, it's an easy win in climate action, because retrofitting existing buildings will be challenging enough with not already adding more. So let's build for the future, not the past. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Next, please.
Hello, thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is Catherine Brown, Colwood resident. I'd like to speak in favor of adopting level 4 on item 8.1, level 4 of the zero carbon step code. Just very briefly, I was talking the other day with a young couple who'd moved here from Toronto. They both found good jobs in the community and they're enjoying the West Coast lifestyle, but they're planning to move back to Toronto very soon. Why, I asked. Well, you may think the high cost of housing or the difficulty. No, not at all. Bear in mind, they're from Toronto. They're moving back because it's too hot here. They described living in their apartment in Royal Bay through the long hot summer with no air conditioning as unbearable. In the aftermath of the 2021 heat dome, there was a lot of province-wide hand-wringing about the need for better air conditioning, in homes particularly. With our changing climate, this is becoming an imperative. This cooling function is more efficiently performed by air source heat pumps. Yes, the single unit enables both heating or cooling according to need, allowing for comfortable living in all seasons. It's December 2023, and here we are debating whether new homes should be fitted with both a polluting greenhouse gas producing gas furnace boiler with the inevitable need for an additional energy guzzling air conditioning unit. A single clean electric heat pump is an available option. Perhaps it's a little bit like at the turn of the last century, a group of people debating whether or not they should continue to build outhouses for horse and carriages as the motor cars started to go by. We have the chance to be on the right side of history, and I urge you to take that step tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Good evening. My name is Craig Dysart, 3153 Linlark. I'd just like to speak of the proposal at the corner of Sooke and Linlark and the continuing to push for the entrance for this project onto Linlark Place. I'm not sure if there was ever an engineering study done on this. I don't know who made the decision that this was the right way, but it's going to dramatically impact every single resident of Linlark Place. I don't see any reason when the address is on Sooke Road that project has to enter and exit onto Linlark. I think that I'm myself in the industry for over 20 years. I work for a general contractor. I know something about working for developers and things that go on. And I really hope you will look at this very seriously about moving that entrance. I understand it's a development corridor, something is going there, but think of the people on Linlark before you let them put that entrance. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. Tony Smethurst, 390 Bonaparte Street. I'm here tonight to offer our support from the Royal Bay Homeowners Association for the Royal Bay Community Centre. I think this project will be fantastic. In addition to the Latoria North and the Latoria South, and hope the feasibility study goes through. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean. Councillor Jensen.
Yeah, thank you. I just noticed the time and I would like to put forward the motion that perhaps we extend the public participation beyond the 20 minutes that I believe is allotted in the procedures bylaw.
You making the motion then?
Yes, thank you.
May I have a seconder, please? Okay, Councillor Jordison. Discussion? Any opposed? Whoops. Councillor Grove?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious, how many more people to speak?
Yes, how many more people need to speak? Two more. So that's, and one online, so 6 more minutes then. Okay, any opposed to the motion? Seeing none, motion carried. We'll extend it for 6 minutes. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Sandra Watson, 2322 Sooke Road. My house was never up for sale. I have been bothered for the last 2 years to sell my place. Now, finally, last July, they came with a half decent offer and my nerves were shot. I was waiting for some medical reports for myself and my son. I told them I could not make up my mind at that time and I was going away on holidays to help my sister move and I was not available till the following month. Never heard from them again. Then they come back at me, they say, oh, we have a new deal for you. We want to meet. They download that offer to exact the same amount that they had to pay the neighbor as a non-refundable deposit. They're trying to get the money back from me. Well, you know, everybody has a price to sell, but I have to buy another place in the area. My family lives here. My life is here. That's it. These guys are coming after me like you wouldn't believe, and they're driving me crazy. It's been 2 years now. The traffic on that street is going to be so bad because they are digging up that whole property. And you know that there's going to be between 20 and 40 vehicles from those construction workers parked around that area every day that they're building. They wouldn't allow the owner before to build 2 small houses. He tried to buy 10 feet of my property so that he would have enough square footage to build 2 small houses. They said he could build a duplex. So now instead of 3 neighbors, I'm going to have 150 neighbors with another 50 cars parked down the side of that street. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, please. You have to push the button there.
Sorry. Aaron Weisgerber, 3134 Linlark Place. I'm coming on behalf of a lot of my neighbors. I understand the deal was not able to be done on the additional property fronting Sooke Road, but I would urge council and staff to really look at the feasibility of putting the driveway to this development onto Sooke Road. The current address dumps onto Sooke Road. The initial proposal was designed that way. And it will really, if it's on the Linlark, it's going to more than double the traffic on that road, which is not designed for no matter what you do at the intersection of Linlark and Sooke. So I put that back to you. And as the homeowner, the neighbor there just suggested, I don't know if Colwood has a plan in place for construction parking, but would encourage that be worked into this plan as well, because when you have this big of a development, having all of those contractors parking on our little residential street makes a mess of this side of the road and makes it hard for everyone that lives there. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Earl, I just want to interrupt. There was a reason why we didn't have the driveway come off Sooke Road, if I remember right. It was purposely moved to Linlark. Could you just remind why that happened?
Thank you, Your Worship. When I think it's item 8.6 comes up, I know our engineer is in the room and can speak to that
Okay,
specific.
perfect. Thank you very much. Next, someone online. The next person online.
Hi there, this is for Sunil. It's Marcy from the City of Colwood. If you can unmute yourself and address council, please.
Hi, could you hear me? Okay. So hello, Mayor and Council. I'll try and keep this brief. My name is Sunil Singhal. I'm a climate campaigner with Stand.Earth. I'm also a climate advocate and a BC resident. I'm here to speak on behalf of Stand and our 1,300 community members in Colwood to show support for Colwood's leadership in passing a strong zero carbon step code policy at the highest level for new buildings. With the record wildfires this past summer, I'm sure all of you already know that we need to be doing everything in our power to address one of the biggest causes of climate change, burning fossil fuels. In BC, gas used in buildings currently accounts for 12% of all greenhouse gas emissions, and in cities, that number soars to 40%. The best way to address these emissions? Stop burning gas in buildings. In fact, numerous studies have found that installing highly efficient heat pumps and electric boilers are one of the most cost-effective climate actions local governments can take. They're also cost-effective. Provincial government data finds that in Colwood's climate zone, building zero carbon costs less than 1% more than building with gas heating and hot water. I encourage you to implement your excellent staff recommendations without delay. The only amendment I'd encourage is to follow Saanich and Victoria's lead and explicitly clarify that renewable natural gas, or RNG, is not a compliance pathway to meet zero carbon requirements. This does not require a bylaw change. And I know Fortis reps intend on presenting at tonight's council meeting and are asking for your support for their RNG proposals. So I just wanted to spend a quick moment addressing it head on. First of all, true RNG is scarce. It's scarce. It's methane gas captured from landfills, wastewater, treatment plants, and agricultural waste, which I'm sure they'll cover in their presentation later tonight. But there's only so much of it. Because of this, RNG should be saved for specific cases where electrification is really hard, for things like heavy industry, not as an excuse to put more gas hookups into homes. This was reaffirmed just this past September when BC's multi-stakeholder Climate Solutions Council recommended the province end all gas connections for space and water heating for new buildings and to, and I quote this, protect affordability for British Columbians and to help reduce the risk of a stranded asset. We have good examples to look to right in our own backyard. Look at what Victoria has done, look at Saanich, and look at other communities across the province. Nearly 24 municipalities across BC have already adopted the zero carbon step code in the last 8 months, with a majority adopting the highest level by the end of 2024. Colwood would be in good company and has the opportunity to join them while making your built environment healthier and more climate resilient. I encourage you to pass the highest level of the zero carbon step code without delay and exclude RNG as a compliance pathway. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I am now going to close public participation. I think we got everybody. Not seeing any hands. I'm going to move on to delegation, section 6. Dr. Janet Ray from the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. Dr. Ray, you have 10 minutes.
Oh, thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Janet Ray. I live in Saanich. I work at the acute medical, oh, I thought it was going to be up on the screen. Okay. I work at the acute medical detox unit in Victoria, and I'm a member of CAPE, the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. I've been asked by CNIC, the Citizens Environmental Network in Colwood, to present information on why it's important for Colwood to accelerate adoption of EL4 of the Zero Carbon Step Code. Submitting the right button to progress. Oh, you're going to do it for me. Thank you. This slide is from the Building Officials Association of BC, illustrating what the emission levels are. On behalf of CNIC, CAPE, and SICAN, the South Island Climate Action Network, our recommendation is to implement the top tier EL4 of the zero carbon performance, which states no fossil fuels allowed, space and water heating and cooking must all be zero carbon. Yeah. So fossil gas in Colwood. My objectives tonight are to describe the health harms of fossil gas for your constituents, the health harms from fracking, both in northeastern BC, and the effect on planetary health and climate disruption, the mental health harms of climate despair on our youth, and zero carbon step code is a positive step forward. I'll be referring to what many people call natural gas as fossil gas this evening, which I believe is a more accurate term. Your home might be a bigger polluter than your vehicle. In homes that use natural gas as their energy source, it's estimated that 64% is for space heating, 35% for water heating, and only 1% for cooking with a gas range. Although gas ranges are a small fraction of overall gas use, they have a disproportionately large and severe negative health impact on people living in the home because gas stoves are not vented to the outside. New research from December 2022 has shown that children who live in homes that use gas stoves have an increased risk of asthma. This is because gas stoves release toxins into the air, including nitrogen dioxide, formaldehyde, and benzene, even when not in use. This can also worsen adult lung function, especially those with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Gas stoves pollute homes with benzene, which is linked to cancer. See blue, think benzene. In addition to causing respiratory problems, benzene is a known carcinogen, and even low doses of airborne benzene raise the risk of many cancers, including lymphoma and leukemia, by damaging people's bone marrow. Elevated benzene levels can linger for 6 hours throughout a home after a gas stove is turned off. Exposure of pregnant women to benzene can also cause birth defects. This is why it's so important from a public health and safety perspective to get to EL4, zero carbon performance, as soon as possible. Renewable natural gas is still methane and would have all the same direct negative health impacts for use in the home. Fossil fuel ads make us sick. To address this problem, Cape doctors are calling for a ban on all fossil fuel advertising in the name of public and planetary health. The campaign launched on Clean Air Day with an open letter to federal ministers signed by 35 plus organizations representing over 700,000 health professionals, voicing support for an ad ban. Similar to the ad ban on cigarettes, Cape is advocating an ad ban on products that use fossil fuels. It's my opinion that as people learn about the health harms of having fossil gas appliances in the home, that these appliances will no longer be selling features, but appliances that end up in the landfill. I'm a mom first and a doctor, and there's no way I would have a gas stove in my home now that I know the harm that they can cause. Electric induction stoves are an alternative. They're increasingly preferred by many top chefs. LNG, fossil gas, 87% methane. Methane has 80 to 84 times the heat trapping effect as CO2 over a 20-year period. I thought it would be helpful to review a schematic of what is involved in hydraulic fracturing, because every time we use a gas appliance here, this is what we are supporting there. Most of our fossil gas comes from northeastern BC. The amount of water needed to frack an individual well varies greatly between and within regions, but according to oilandgasinfo.ca, frack jobs use up to 100,000 cubic meters of water per well, which is equal to 40 Olympic swimming pools. Fresh water is combined with a slurry of proprietary chemicals and silica, which is forced down a well where under high pressure it fractures the shale and releases methane. Much of the methane emissions from fracking come from leakage during and after the extraction process itself, called fugitive emissions. Wells can leak for years even after they've been decommissioned, and is one of the reasons why the full life cycle of fossil gas is actually worse than coal or oil. Fracking is jeopardizing our fresh water, as what is returned is toxic, contaminated water, often radioactive, that becomes a biohazard for the surrounding populations and ecosystems. Many of the airborne toxins that are released by gas stoves are released at fracking sites through flaring of the escaping methane, leading to higher rates of cancer and birth defects in northeastern BC, now often referred to as the sacrifice zone. And all of this is happening 24/7, 365, even when we are in unprecedented drought conditions, taking short showers and looking out on our brown lawns. So these are 6 graphs. This is what the Earth's environmental record looks like for the past 1,000 years. Remarkable stability up until the early 1900s. And then we see exponential rise in first CO2, methane, nitrogen dioxide with corresponding change in global temperature and sea level rise. I was born at 315 parts per million CO2. We're now at 420. This has happened on my watch, on our watch as the adults in the room. I feel a responsibility to do whatever I can to improve climate stability for future generations. This is what health impacts look like up close and personal. Wildfires, flooding, heat. Over 600 deaths in 2021 in the heat dome, increasing numbers of climate refugees, crop failures, ecosystem stress, collapse, sea level rise. I don't think I need to go on. What was news to me, however, is the impact on our youth's mental health and eco-grief. In addition to the physical health harms, there are also mental health and societal harms that result from continuing our reliance on fossil gas. As physicians, we're seeing increasing problem of eco-grief, especially in young people. The Lancet, a prestigious medical journal from Britain, published a study in December 2021 called Climate Anxiety in Children and Young People and Their Beliefs About Government Responses to Climate Change, a global survey. They surveyed 10,000 young people ages 16 to 25 from 10 different countries, 1,000 participants per country. Respondents from all countries were worried about climate change, 59% extremely worried, 84% moderately worried. Emotions included sadness, anxiety, anger, powerlessness. A full 45% said that climate change affected their daily life and functioning. And to quote their findings, climate anxiety and distress were correlated with perceived inadequate government response and associated with feelings of betrayal. You don't need a medical degree to know that young people who are depressed, anxious, and feeling helpless are much more likely to seek escape through drug use as a way to numb out and deal with overwhelming and uncomfortable feelings. The hallmark of addiction, continued use of a substance despite negative consequences. So continued use of fossil gas for your constituents means increased asthma, COPD, cancer, youth depression, climate anxiety. For public health, significant air pollutants, especially in the sacrifice zones, water contamination with chemicals and radioactivity, destruction of ALR land, the sacrifice zone, increased pregnancy complications, and for planetary health, a significant and disproportionately large contribution to the climate emergency with heat domes, fires, floods, ocean rise, and permafrost. As with any addiction, the best time to address it is when it first starts, before too much damage has been done. The best time to address our addiction to fossil fuels was over 50 years ago, but the second best time is now. Climate stability for the next generation. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has identified the next 7 years as being critical to our GHG emissions in order to keep below 1.5 degrees Celsius global temperature rise to minimize climate disruption. By voting for accelerated adoption of EL4, the Zero Carbon Step Code, you will show your community, and in particular young people, that you understand the science and urgency of the climate crisis and have the leadership to address this urgent issue. It will give regional consistency for builders, work to improve the physical and mental health of your constituents, and give cause for hope. CNIC, CAPE, and SciCan, as a follow-up to your Environmental Committee's recommendation, would like to ask Council to pass a motion. Can I finish my last sentence?
Yes,
We would like to ask you to pass a motion that the municipality of Colwood implement EL4 of the Zero Carbon Step Code to align as closely as possible with Victoria and Saanich timelines, and that council direct staff to write up the appropriate bylaw. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ray. Any questions for Dr. Ray? Seeing none, I shall move on to item 7, which is our consent agenda. We have 3 items on our consent agenda. Do any of the councillors want any one of these items removed? Okay. Can I get a motion? Okay, so Councillor Jensen moves, second, Councillor Grove. Discussion? Seeing none. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Move on to item 8. 8.1, our favorite subject, Zero Carbon Step Code. Mr. Grant, are you going to introduce this? Yes, no, maybe so. I know we have 3 presentations, so you're gonna go last, I assume. So should I call, I think Fortis BC is gonna be first, is that correct? Just get clarification from you.
Evening, council. That's right. Yeah, we were gonna let the delegations go first and then I'd follow after.
Okay, thanks very much.
Without further ado, I think we have Fortis up first.
Yep. So you have to push that little button. Yes.
All right, good evening, council. My name is Carmen LeBlanc. Before I start in talking, first, before who I work for, I'm a mom of 2 kids. I have a 13 and 12-year-old that go to school right here at Dunsmuir. I have a degree in environmental science. I enjoy working in my garden and hiking in our forests and spending time on our ocean. The environment is of the utmost importance to me too. So I am here proudly as an employee of Fortis BC, a utility and energy provider in this province that long before climate emergencies were voted on by councils on this island and around the province, saw the need to change the energy that we deliver and how we deliver it. I'm a community relations manager for Fortis. Again, it's nice to see you. About a year since I was here last time and you were considering changes to the building code. It's important to acknowledge that many are looking at the highest levels of the BC Building Code and now the Zero Carbon Step Code as tools for local governments like yours to support emissions reductions by limiting or reducing connections to and expansion of the gas distribution system. While this might seem a clear and simple correlation, please consider the following as you implement changes that will have lasting impacts on access to and investment in low carbon energy solutions. As the largest energy provider in the province, Fortis BC has both a gas and electric utility, as well as an industry-leading alternative energy division. In our electric utility, Fortis BC generates hydroelectricity from 4 dams on the Columbia River. Through an extensive and integrated grid, transmission and distribution systems, we deliver this electricity and additional electric energy purchased from BC Hydro and out of province as needed. In our gas utility, Fortis BC owns and operates and maintains province-wide network of piping and supporting infrastructure. Through this robust system, we purchase and deliver traditional and low-carbon gaseous energy to homes, businesses, and industrial customers. We do not extract natural gas. This system also delivers low-carbon gaseous energy to evolving transportation and marine sectors. In some areas of the province, our utilities overlap, and Fortis BC delivers both gas and electricity to homes and businesses. Here, we are provided with a unique and important perspective on energy use in BC. From electric generation through both gas.
Excuse me, Carmen, did you want to cycle through your slide?
Oh, thanks.
It's right. Took us a little bit to clear.
That's okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
just the button on the-
Perfect. So in some areas, we deliver both energies. Here we can see gas and electric transmission, delivery, demand, and use across many customer types. It's safe to say that we know and understand energy delivery and use in our province and communities. As we look to build a strong, resilient, and sustainable today and tomorrow here in Colwood and across the province, as local governments use tools like the building and energy step codes to influence changes and achievements in climate action, it's important the choices made today support lasting and robust long-term solutions. Are the choices we make today reinforcing a platform for innovation and solutions with the use of our existing and extensive energy infrastructure, or do they only provide apparent short-term solutions with long-term or with limiting long-term effects? As we look to address our contributions to climate change, reduce GHG and carbon emissions, it's important to have a clear understanding of the kinds of energy we use, where the energy is generated, where we use it, and how we get it there. What infrastructure and land or space for new infrastructure is needed to deliver the energy we need today and into the future? What are the costs in carbon and in dollars? Are the energy delivery systems we have and build today resilient to changing weather? What happens when one energy delivery system is impacted by weather or an incident? Is there another in place to back it up or support the homes and businesses in the meantime? In the early 1900s, Victorians accessed gaseous energy through a system of in-ground pipes. Gaseous energy is really great at heating water. It's fast and efficient. At the turn of the century, the gas distribution system supported lighting and radiant heating from boilers in homes and businesses and fueled industrial processes. It was convenient and reliable. The gas of the early 1900s was delivered from coal. Innovations through the century saw the gas distribution system transform from delivering coal gas to a cleaner burning option that today we call natural gas. In the early 1900s, we saw a large investment in an expansion of the gas system here on Vancouver Island. On an island of large trees, access to an alternative energy is important when the power goes out. Some homes, businesses, industries, and transportation need access to affordable and reliable energy. In communities without a gas system, homes and businesses use portable, drop-in alternatives like heating oil and propane to achieve these same objectives. These are both higher in carbon. Today's gas distribution system is transitioning once again and will continue to evolve with ongoing innovations in low carbon gases. For over a decade, FortisBC has been leading the way in demonstrating that the very same system that is being used to deliver a better energy, like low carbon gases from waste. Renewable natural gas, as you've heard, is made from biogenic waste, from curbside organics, agricultural waste, and more. Collectively, we need to use less energy. We also need to work together to support housing affordability and climate action. We need multiple, robust, and resilient energy delivery systems that support homes and businesses today and into the future. We need to support innovation and protect our abilities to access low carbon energy. Both BC Hydro and FortisBC recognize the need for a diverse and complementary suite of low carbon energy. Both are investing in the innovation of low carbon gases like hydrogen. In building a better BC, we need all the tools in the toolbox. At a level of EL3, the zero carbon step code would allow for meaningful use and investment in the gas system, allowing it to deliver low carbon energy today and into the future. Thank you.
Any questions? I have a quick question, just on that one chart you had on the CO2 emissions. Do you have one that that shows how much methane of each of these? Like there wouldn't be any methane from electricity, but natural gas. I just heard some stats.
Yeah, these are numbers presented and provided by the province of BC. I'm happy to get you information on methane, but this is the carbon emission equivalent in kilograms of CO2 per gigajoule of energy.
And I'm assuming electricity in Alberta is so high because it's coal.
Electricity in Alberta was coal generated. It's now transitioning largely to natural gas. In the northwestern US, that's a similar story. We have some hydro and some natural gas generated electricity. Yeah, it's way higher than here in BC.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Seeing no other questions, I'll have BC Hydro. Robin Webb, I believe.
Yes. And so my slides, should I just let you know when to advance to the next one?
She said something about slides.
Sorry, it's Marcy Lalonde. Did you want me to share the slideshow for you?
Yeah, if you would.
Okay, we'll do 1 second.
Okay. As we're waiting for that to come up. Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Robin Webb, and I'm the manager of local government conservation and climate action with BC Hydro. Today, I also have my colleague Ted Olenek with me, and both of us will be available after the presentation to answer questions as well. So today we were invited to speak by staff to talk about how BC Hydro is preparing for an electrified future in the province, and also how we plan to support the adoption of electrification policies such as zero carbon step code. So if we move to the next slide, just a little bit of context. So we at Hydro, as you're probably aware, are a public utility. We serve about 5 million customers, or 95% of the province's population. Currently, we have about 30 hydroelectric plants across the province, and next year we anticipate adding another Site C on Peace River in northern BC to that mix. We also partner with about 125 private power producers across the province. So next slide. We just wanted to show you this graph to illustrate that about 98% of the power that BC Hydro generates comes from clean and renewable resources, and most of that is powered by water. We are a leader in clean electricity generation in North America, and as you can see by this graph, it shows you the relative share of the power grid that is non-emitting in BC compared with Alberta and other states. And also wanted to note that we do have a mandate from the provincial government to ensure that in the future, 100% of the power that we generate will come from renewable and clean energy sources. So today I'm here to speak to two big questions. The first one being, when are we going to need more electricity? And the second one being, what are we going to do to keep the grid strong and reliable? So if we advance to the next slide, and then the one after it, and one more, please. So on the first point, at BC Hydro, we currently have a surplus of electricity, and shortly we'll be bringing the Site C project online. Site C will add about 1,100 megawatts of capacity to our grid, which is just shy of about 10% of the capacity we have today. However, towards the end of this decade, even Site C isn't going to be enough. So you may have heard some recent announcements, if you move to the next slide, that BC Hydro is actually planning a call for power. And so in our upcoming first call, which we're planning to issue next spring, we are seeking proposals for utility scale projects. And we anticipate that solar and wind will be some of the most cost-effective bids that we'll receive in that open call for power. I also just want to note that we anticipate Site C being the last large-scale hydroelectric dam that will be built in BC, just because of the economics of solar and wind and other renewable energy sources have changed so much. But if we move on to the next slide, at Hydro, and as noted by Fortis as well, before we look to secure more supply, we are doing everything possible to reduce the demand for power in the first place. BC Hydro has a long and successful history of energy conservation and efficiency programs through our Power Smart initiatives, the kind that offer homeowners incentives for insulation, for instance. And without those energy efficiency offers, we would actually need 10% more generation in BC than what we have today, but we've been able to reduce our need through these initiatives. And I just want to note that we're always working on new programs. Today, for instance, we even announced a new incentive for EV energy management technology. So if we move on to the next slide. There have been a lot of questions about how Hydro plans for our electrified future, and we do this through our integrated resource plan. So this is a little bit like a utility version of an official community plan. Our most recent update to our integrated resource plan positions BC Hydro to meet the electrification loads associated with meeting the province of BC's Clean BC targets. And in our future integrated resource plans, we are going to take into account numerous scenarios of what accelerated electrification will mean for our system so that we have the supply in place before it's needed. So shifting gears a little bit and talking a little bit more about not generation, but how we get that energy to our customers, and answering some questions around what we plan to do to keep the grid strong and reliable. If we move on to 2 slides forward, please. And the next one, perfect, thank you. In BC, we have both a transmission and a distribution grid. Both are really important, but that knowing that electrification is a major priority, BC Hydro invested approximately $3.5 billion to upgrade and build new grid infrastructure of both kinds. And just for context, that's one of the largest expansions of electrical infrastructure in the province's history. But I know, if we move to the next slide, please, you're mostly interested in what the distribution capacity in Colwood looks like. So I talked with our planners and was able to provide you with some information tonight that there's one substation and 7 distribution feeders that deliver electricity to Colwood. And so of those 7 feeders, 4 have plenty of capacity, and 3 of them have actually reached a use threshold where Hydro has begun our capital planning improvement process to bring more capacity to the areas. So these projects are already in the planning stages and they'll kick off next year and will be completed in 2030. And this will ensure that Colwood has lots of ample capacity to deal with growth in the future, because we know that you are a growing community. If we move on to the next slide. Just quickly, I wanted to address some of the things that we're doing to strengthen the grid to climate resilience. There's a lot of redundancy built into electrical grids in the first place, but we recognize that the increase in severity and frequency of climate events really means that we do need to do more to prevent, detect, manage, and respond to climate change. So we have a team that looks at how we can support communities' core critical infrastructure after severe climate events. And we're also working with Canadian Standards Association and others to ensure that the grid is always going to be robust into the future. So I want to end my presentation just with being humble and noting that we at Hydro do not claim that we don't have any challenges. So if we move on to the next slide. And to talk about some of the things that we're doing to address some of those current challenges that we have. So firstly, one of the challenges we've heard from industry is around our distribution extension policy. This is a policy that outlines the responsibilities that both the customer and BC Hydro have when it comes to connecting a new service to the grid. We are currently reviewing our policy and really assessing our options to introduce more equitable fees and greater cost predictability when it comes to connecting customers to the grid. And if we move on to the next slide. Another thing that we're really actively working on is improving our connection timelines. Again, we've heard from industry and from our local government partners that we need to, similar to a lot of municipal permitting timelines, that we need to reduce our timelines for customer connections as well. And so some of the things that we've been doing in this realm is really looking to create better efficiencies with some of our processes. And we've also just hired more staff in our Vancouver Island design team to be able to reduce some of the timelines for, again, connecting new customers and new projects to the grid. So thanks for giving me some time to chat with you today. And I think both Ted and I are here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks very much, Robin. I'll open the floor up to council for questions. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Worship. And thank you to both presentations. Very illuminating. And I do appreciate your candor, Robin. We are, I guess we have a recent issue here in our community where, we're trying to make some changes and we're given really long timelines from your, I'm sure, a different department within BC Hydro to get the work done. And I mean, that puts the brakes on stuff that we're trying to plan. So on one hand, we want to electrify the entire community is, where we're heading. On the other hand, we're having a difficult time doing sort of singular projects and getting them completed to move an area forward. And so it's kind of tough to make that. That's an awfully big leap forward, and I just worry about working beyond our supply chain or our capacity to support, to support the infrastructure. And yeah, I'll listen to a response and with thanks.
Yeah, and Ted, feel free to jump in at any point too. Like I noted, I think, being honest, I know that COVID was tough on our employee retention in some areas of the province. But again, we've been able to hire more staff for that design group in Vancouver Island specifically, that are the ones that are the frontline staff that accept those applications and look at the designs. So that is one of the initiatives I'm happy to say that we're, expecting to see the timelines for those connections start to decrease over time. Ted, did you want to add anything there as well?
Sure, thank you. Certainly BC Hydro being a corporation and part of government, like local government, it's not a choice of what we want to do in these things. It's a question of us have the responsibility to do it. We realize the responsibility for us to meet the clean target set up by the province and by local government. But we know there's challenges ahead, and that includes, as Robert mentioned, hiring more staff and certainly utilizing the private sector, a lot more contractors, independent agencies to help us get the work done a lot faster. You have tight timelines, and we want to make sure that they can be met so we can achieve the goals that were mandated.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, I just want a clarification, Robin, if I could. Did I hear you say, I just want to make sure I clearly understand this. Did you say with the completion of Site C, it adds 10% more power to overall BC? Is that what you said?
It's a just shy of 10%. Yeah, I think it's like 8 point something.
And in your predictions, where does that take us? Like where would that take us to, like 2050? Or because you said there was something else I caught, which was a bit surprising to me when you said no more, I believe you said no more dams, and you're going to look at the extra capacity with renewable resource sources, right? I think that's what you said, correct?
Yeah, so when Site C comes online, we anticipate that capacity will be taken up in and around 2028, 2029. And so that's why we're doing that call for power next summer, so that we are bringing additional resources online in 2028 is the goal.
Okay, so, and that takes us to what population? So I guess what I'm trying to get is 10% more gets us how many more people in British Columbia?
Oh, and so again, our integrated resource plan process is an iterative process. So as we see demand increasing, we anticipate doing successive calls for power. So while the one coming up next year is just a start, there'll be many more of those into the future. But again, we are also investing more in what we call demand side management or energy efficiency as well too. So it's not necessarily just having to always create more resources. There'll be more investment on how we can reduce energy demand across the province as well too.
Yeah, I heard that. So I was just trying to figure out how that all worked. So the last question I have then, and this is a bombshell of a question here, is and you can answer yes or no, or I don't know, but is in the future, is nuclear an option that you guys looked at?
To my knowledge, it's not part of our current resource mix planning process, but Ted, do you have anything to add to that?
Very clear by successive governments that nuclear energy is not on the mix. If you were to ask me 20 years ago about solar power, photovoltaic power, wind being part of our regular mix, I would have said that's too far off in the future. Well, the future is now. The new call is something we're going to be relying on solar and wind power to provide that energy, and that'll provide a lot. And technology is changing so fast, whether it's battery storage, solar, wind, and other forms of alternative energy to help us meet that load. So things are certainly changing fast.
Thank you very much. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask about solar in particular, because a number of our new developments have been built as solar ready. So if BC Hydro was planning to incentivize solar participants joining the grid, there are a lot of homes that would be able to help provide additional power to the grid, and especially in areas that may be more in need of additional power in our own area as well. Could you comment on whether or not there are incentives or if that has been considered?
Yeah, certainly I can speak to that as well too. So in the call for power that we talked about, just to distinguish, the solar and the wind that we're talking about in that context are really large scale utility projects. That being said, our integrated resource plan does still see a role for smaller or distributed solar resources. And it does say that we will explore whether or not we will incentivize those projects or not, like the smaller rooftop projects. However, to date, we don't incentivize them, but we do, through our net metering program, allow anyone to connect to the grid and pay them an amount that's commensurate with what they would be paying for electricity as well too. So there are no barriers to anyone doing it today. We're just not currently providing incentives in this context, but in the future, our plan does set out a context where we can start to explore that.
Well, we are at a point in Colwood where potentially, 1,000 or 2,000 homes could all have solar roofs on them in areas where they have unobstructed sunshine. And that could really benefit the particular grid, but it would require, I think, some incentives, because, as you know, new homes are very expensive to build, and it having a solar option added on, it often could make them unattainable for some folks. Whereas if we had a project where BC Hydro was partnered with Colwood and we could identify a large grouping that would provide some certainty for BC Hydro, some certainty for the homeowners, and it would reduce costs and benefit us all. So I'd just like to suggest that would be something that could be achieved with a partnership with even just a single developer or two developers who could achieve something.
Yeah, I do just want to note, though, that there really is a cost differential between, again, that small scale and utility scale projects. And because of our consciousness around rates too, that's what, again, where in the future we'll be looking to procure that larger scale wind and solar at a rate that is more desirable to BC Hydro in terms of keeping our rates to ratepayers low. However, that doesn't mean that there won't be a role for rooftop solar in the future as well. Just I want to be sure that we're communicating clearly just about that there is really a price difference when we're talking about the cost effectiveness of those big utility scale projects.
If I could add, there are some programs with the federal government with loan programs to be able to install photovoltaic systems on your home. And who knows, maybe by the time we're done this, there may be someone else one that I'm not aware of, but there are programs, I'm sure there are programs down the road where something may happen. But for us right now, the cost, as Robin mentioned, to convert to photovoltaic, considering the low rates we have the third lowest rates in North America. So really, it's not a cost advantage. It's more of a conscious environmental decision that people are making. And when you balance it with regards to you're just not using hydro, which is already a clean renewable resource, and you're using solar. If you really want to make a difference to deal with carbon output, is use an electric vehicle. and we kind of recommend purchasing an electric vehicle, using that fund towards an electric vehicle, then you're really reducing your carbon output.
Yes, so what I'm hearing from our residents in this area that I'm speaking of is that their power systems are fully allocated and they don't have maybe the capacity to add their electric vehicle charger onto their homes, whereas perhaps solar would offer some benefits to increase that option. But thank you.
Hey, seeing no other questions, thank you very much, Robin and Ted. And we'll turn it over to you. Byron, we saved the best for last.
And Chair, if I may be able to add to the previous comments there. When it comes to solar, the natural progression of the BC Energy Step Code, we're going to be saying the word step quite a bit tonight. We'll see that the net zero target is met. So that will mean that the house, a new house that is, has to produce the same amount of energy on site as it uses. So that will be for new construction. And then the retrofit code, I imagine, will follow something similar where it has to meet the same intention of BC Energy Step Code. So anyway, talk a lot about that in the future, I'm sure. So I'll forewarn you that my slides are not quite as nice as the previous ones because I did them, but I think we'll get the point across still. So anyway, yeah, so we're here tonight to discuss the impacts of a change to the zero carbon step code, how retrofits and existing buildings are affected, and we'll touch on renewable natural gas. So what is zero carbon step code? The zero carbon step code is a provincial BC building code standard that local governments can choose to implement in their jurisdiction that was in effect May 1st of this year. The zero carbon step code sets a maximum annual amount of greenhouse gas emissions that each new building is allowed to emit. The energy step code and the zero carbon step code sound similar and are related, but are not the same thing. The BC Energy Step Code is a provincial standard that sets energy efficiency requirements for new buildings, while the BC Zero Carbon Step Code sets greenhouse gas emissions limits for new buildings. So the province has a timeline for implementation of the Energy Step Code and the Zero Carbon Step Code. This past summer, Energy Step Code became mandatory across the province, and houses now have to meet Step 3. While the dates are not finalized yet, the province has a similar plan for implementation of the Zero Carbon Step Code. So the targets and timelines are illustrated on this slide for reducing carbon emissions in buildings. So on the right side of the slide, you'll see by 2024, buildings may be required provincially to meet medium carbon emissions, which means you are decarbonizing space heat. By 2027, buildings may need to meet low carbon emissions, which means decarbonizing both space heat and hot water. And in 2030, zero carbon ready, which means that buildings are fully decarbonized. Similar to the Energy Step Code, governments now have an opportunity to accelerate these requirements sooner if they choose to through the Zero Carbon Step Code. So where is Colwood currently with Energy Step Code and lowering carbon emissions? For new houses in Colwood, the builder currently has an option to go a Step 3 of the Energy Step Code with a low carbon energy system, or Step 5. A low carbon energy system as defined in our building bylaw is close to the same as emissions level 3 of the Zero Carbon Step Code. The table shown on the left side of the slide is the section of the building code showing the Zero Carbon Step Code with opt-in emissions caps. In houses, the big difference would be that by adopting emissions level 4 of Zero Carbon Step Code, in all cases, you would need to electrify your space and hot water heating. Colwood is currently near the equivalent of emissions level 3, again, which requires space heating to be electric in all cases, and in most cases, you can still have a gas hot water system. With our planned move for larger part 3 buildings this coming summer in 24, these larger residential buildings will be required to have electric space heating and hot water in most cases anyway, due to their size and energy demand. So you would not see much of an impact with change there. The term zero carbon step code can be a bit misleading, as it does not make the building all electric. And you can currently still have what are referred to as luxury loads in the industry, such as a gas stove. The benefits to consider for adopting an emissions level prescribed by the zero carbon step code would be harmonizing with neighboring municipalities who have taken this path and more regional consistency. The zero carbon step code is a more simple and direct approach. Oh, that's a pretty good slide. It is important to note that the zero carbon step code only applies to new construction and does not apply to existing buildings. The city is developing a plan to approach existing buildings and retrofits to increase energy efficiency and reduce emissions. The province is also working on a retrofit code, which should provide municipalities with more guidance. Existing buildings contribute substantially to greenhouse gas emissions in BC. In the City of Colwood Climate Foundation's report, residential buildings alone accounted for an estimated 16,000 tons of CO2 in 2018. Using BC stats data, there were an estimated 6,830 households in Colwood in 2018. And a side note to that, the term household for the purpose of this estimate means a house, duplex, townhouse, or apartment. That is an average of 2.35 tons of CO2 emissions per household. For Colwood to meet its target of being zero carbon for residential buildings by 2050, there would need to be about 263 existing households decarbonized each year to meet that goal. Retrofits are considered the high-hanging fruit. So for context, the graph on the slide shows the difference of emissions between 4 types of houses we see in Colwood of a similar size. You'll see that an older house can emit close to 6 tons of CO2 on its own every year, shown in orange. You can also see the comparison between where Colwood is at now with the low carbon energy system, which again is near the equivalent of zero carbon at EL3, shown in gray, compared to a house that meets zero carbon step code EL4, shown in light blue on the right. For context, in 2022, the city issued 71 building permits for single family dwellings, going from our current cap on emissions to EL4 of the zero carbon step code would see an estimated reduction of 50 tons for that year in that example. For a comparison, by retrofitting 71 houses in a year, there would be an estimated reduction of 426 tons of emissions in that year.
That's per home, correct?
Household.
That's per household.
Yeah, and that's rough, just to give you an idea. Yeah, so any residential dwelling unit would be included in that. So we've heard a bit about it tonight already, but I'll go over it. So what is renewable natural gas? When organic waste decomposes, it naturally releases biogas, a GHG containing carbon dioxide and methane into the atmosphere. Before this biogas can escape as GHGs, it can be captured and purified to create what is referred to as renewable natural gas. There has been quite a bit of discussion around renewable natural gas and its application with the new carbon emission standards for buildings. Speaking to the province, they're exploring and possibly creating an energy modeling rule set, which would provide some clarity for energy advisors on how to model with renewable natural gas. As a reminder, energy advisors are the people who design buildings to meet the energy and zero carbon step code. This is uncertain at this point, though. As the province has stated, local governments adopting a zero carbon step code level aims at limiting greenhouse gases from the operating systems of buildings and not targeting energy sources for buildings. Staff feel this proposed move and the one we have currently still allows for flexibility in this developing technology with renewable natural gas and does not prevent its use. If there is a factor or credit to consider in future code changes with emissions caps calculated through an energy model, this change would still allow for that potential factor. Staff confirmed with the Capital Regional District that bylaws aiming to limit fossil fuel use in new buildings will not undermine the business case for the CRD's renewable natural gas project at the Heartland landfill. Their statement was that it will generate revenue for the CRD and not cost the taxpayers. So staff reached out to the industry for feedback on the zero carbon step code. Responses are attached as appendices to this briefing and were somewhat limited from builders. It seems for the most part, the building community is getting used to these changes. What this means for smaller buildings, again, is both the space, hot water heating systems must be electric in new construction. And again, a change to AL4 from where we're at now would mean that hot water systems would need to be electric. There are mixed opinions on costs, and our research shows that any differences are negligible. What it comes down to, it seems, is that it's a preference, and there are pros and cons to electric and gas hot water heaters. So for example, an electric hot water tank may cost an additional $100 annually for an average household with current energy costs, but is cheaper to install than a gas on-demand system. A gas on-demand system may save space, but it also takes longer for hot water to reach a fixture unless a recirculation system is also installed at an added cost. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, with our planned move for larger Part 3 buildings this coming summer in 2024, these larger residential buildings will be required to have electric space heating and hot water in most cases anyway. There is certainly an impact to the gas supplier and installers of these systems by making this change. So in conclusion, through the BC provincial initiative, new buildings in BC will need to meet the zero carbon step code EL4 by 2030, if not adopted by local governments ahead of that time. Local governments have an opportunity now to directly cap emissions in new construction. It is difficult to generalize because of all the factors to consider, but there is a greater cost to making these changes down the road in larger buildings, which in some cases require a costly electrical service upgrade. New construction is considered by many to be the low-hanging fruit for change. I will do my best to field questions relative to this. And if I don't have the answers to more technical questions or data right now, we can certainly return with as much detail as council would like. So that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much, Byron. I'll open the floor to council. Councillor Jordison.
Thank you, Mayor. Byron, I was just curious, and you may not know, but how many people in Colwood are still operating on an oil furnace or wood heat?
I don't have that off the top of my head unless a colleague runs up here and
Saves the day.
we could make note of that though.
Okay. The other question I had was in regards to gas, and I know we had a home that had a gas stove and opted to remove it and put in an electric one. And just for the mere sake that the kids were young and kept the pilot light wasn't always turned off, that sort of thing. And it just posed more of a risk by having it. So I'm just wondering, we were able to turn it off at the source, but what is the exit strategy for gas into homes and on our streets? Like, you can turn it off by not having that appliance run it, but it still comes into your house. Is there a process like to have it removed?
Yeah, certainly. You know, when it comes to pull the slide up here. Yeah. Please. Yeah. So when it comes to zero carbon step code, it is important to note, you can't really read that at the bottom of the code excerpt, but it says redundant and backup equipment for the systems is permitted to be excluded. So that this does not include gas stoves at this point. It doesn't include a backup heating system. But to answer your question, you need to get a gas installer to pull a permit to deactivate a system the same as you would to activate it. So definitely need the right person to do that and the right authority to oversee that. So Technical Safety BC oversees electrical permits and gas permits, and we would hope that they would obtain those. And we do pay attention to it as well. So,
okay,
if that answers your question.
yeah, thank you.
Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Worship. And I think I found it here for myself, Byron, but the difference between EL3 and EL4 pertains specifically to the hot water. Is that right?
To generalize it, yeah, through Chair, if I may, to generalize it, sorry, Marcy. Just leave that up there for me. Yeah. Yeah, so the reason that the is our understanding, the reason that they put the metrics they do in that that code excerpt that we're gonna see here in a second, it is to intentionally kick out certain types of systems. So you'll see when an energy design comes through, the reason that they put those metrics in there is to intentionally kick out that system. So when you look, I don't know if it's easy enough to see, but that middle column there, you'll see a 6, a 2.5, and then a 1.5.
Right.
The 6, you could still have an energy efficiency house that has its heat and hot water on gas. The 2.5, you can still get a heating system, or sorry, you could still get a on-demand water heating system, a gas water system, but your heat is electric at that point. And then the EL4 that we're talking about, the 1.5, that kicks out both your space and hot water heating.
Okay, thank you. Now, we did a lot of work as a council, I mean, from last term into this term on the step code 3, 4, 5. Is this it? Or are we going to be back again in another year with something different? I feel like we've done all this already and we got ahead of the curve and we went to step 4 and now we're here again. And really from what I heard you say, there's little difference between this and then the step 4 that where we were headed, or
yeah, through the chair.
In general terms, sorry, I won't hold you to it.
So where we went before with the previous council, there is you heard me say step. So I've said step so much tonight, but BC Energy step code step 3 with our low carbon energy system, or step 5. Traditionally in BC, before these standards came out that you see in front of you here, that was a bit of a workaround or an alternative for municipalities to cap carbon emissions before these were in place. Okay. So I could go into this forever, but the Building Act doesn't allow you to require something for a building that's not in the building code. So by offering an option,
okay,
you incentivize someone with going with that cap. So in an answer to your other question, yes, this does finalize the roadmap for the most part with this stuff. I think there'll be some changes with EL4 because you've heard zero carbon ready, you've heard fully decarbonized, and then right now when you look at it, EL4, you can still get 1.5 a year in there. So I do picture that evolving. And then as far as the BC Energy step code goes, what a lot of municipalities now are doing are they're honing in on this, and then they're just following the provincial timeline for BC Energy step code. So in answer to your question, generally speaking, this is it for new construction, and then we'd move on to retrofits, which are a big contributor.
Thankfully, we have you to keep track of this for us. Thank you. And again, I think I found the answer, but I mean, this program is being pushed by the province as an optional adoption, along with beside the step code. Is that right? Is that my read?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I can't speak for the province, but my understanding is, it really depends where you are in the province, right? I mean, when it comes to types of heating systems, when it comes to, you know, it's easy for us to say on Vancouver Island and Lower Mainland to talk about these things, but when you're in northern BC where, you know, power outages are a real thing, they don't get fixed right away. And we live in a very temperate area here as well. If you ask me, I think we have it pretty easy compared to the rest of the province. So the idea with that being optional is depends on where you are in the province and the feel, so to speak.
I got it. So I guess my question in of itself is these standards have come to us from the province, or where has this EL where has this come from? Has this come from industry, or has this come from the province?
Yeah, this would come from the Clean BC provincial initiative. So their goal, and you know, similar to the BC Energy Step Code, is we could got it up here. This will help. Marcy, if you don't mind moving that thing there. So I hopefully council can see that all right. But yeah, so 2022, there's an asterisk beside it. Now that is mandatory. So the step 3 and step 2. So they're laying out this timeline for both, and there are certain stages where it's mandatory either way. So it does stem from the Clean BC timeline.
Gotcha. Thank you, Byron.
Yeah.
Councillor Dave.
Thank you. So the recommendation that's on our agenda tonight is for all Part 9 residential buildings January 1st. For the Part 3 buildings, which is multi-unit residential buildings 6 stories or less, July 1st of 24. And then multi-unit 7 stories or more, November 1st of 24. And all other Part 3 buildings, November 1st of 24. My question is, how does this align with what the City of Victoria and the District of Saanich timelines? Because I'm not as familiar with the directions that they've taken. So, and I have heard from a number of people that there's a real benefit to us all moving in the same direction, so that when developers, builders, construction workers move from area to area, we're all kind of, we got the same building code and we have the same power grid.
Thank you for the question, and through the chair. So bullet 1, you'll see it's suggested all Part 9 residential buildings January 1st, 2024. The timeline that they went with was, I believe it was December 1st of 2023. So we've passed that now. And then the rest of it, though, is synced with what Saanich and Victoria are planning on doing. It's important for us to highlight that this past summer, so in it would have been July 1st of 2023, we implemented our BC Energy Step Code level 3 or 5. And since then, we've seen everyone opt for the level 3 with, sorry, I shouldn't say level, BC Energy Step Code 3 with the low carbon energy systems. And then, you know, one of our larger stakeholders in Royal Bay is voluntarily going electric anyway. So they are meeting that EL4 standard. So, you know, another important note is that there's a code change coming out in March of 2024, which doesn't specifically require cooling, but I think the draft wording is that there has to be a certain area of refuge in the house that does not exceed 26 degrees Celsius. So while it doesn't, the draft language doesn't say specifically cooling, we do feel that that is the direction it's going, because we'll have to get a real thought out design to show that there is that area of refuge. But again, that's draft stage at this point, and the province would want me to say that.
So my last question then on this is, because regulation changes come along slowly and hopefully predictably, sometimes our buildings come in for their building permits either right before or right after it's been adopted. I'm just wondering, are we ensuring that our timelines are being adhered to so that it shouldn't really matter. We know they're building this year, they're coming in, they're talking to us. Are we ensuring that the code and the carbon step code are both going to be effectively managed so that the timing of when they apply for their permit doesn't negatively impact what we're trying to achieve?
Yeah, through the chair, most certainly. I mean, the most clean way, if you want my opinion, for local governments is to, when there's a code change or when there's anything like this, is applications received on or after that date are subject to those changes. And that includes, as I say, the code changes as well. So it's important to stick to that. Otherwise it could get pretty murky if you ask me. So, and they actually, using the code changes as an example, they actually specifically say that applications, building permit applications, not DPs, not rezonings, building permit applications received on or after that date of the code changes are subject to it. So.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Councillor Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Merritt. This is a code discussion, and I'd like to talk about it from a different perspective. We have a certain urgency to lower carbon, period. The business of resilience to the grid and the system is the reality of such things as solar and wind are clean. We can use them and store them in battery storage on site very effectively. It's being done in many places of the world now, where indeed software simply purchases energy at a very, very low rate and sells it to the grid at a much higher rate when needed. So we have the drop in demand midday and a spike in production, which works well for that. And we have the storage systems, which are increasing rapidly. May I remind everyone, in every electric car, there is a 50, 70, 80 kilowatt hour battery, and can be used with vehicle to grid technology to power the homes when in blackout or in storm situations. And if you have solar at home, you can trickle charge that battery during the day. So it's got unlimited length. We have a big tank out back here in the Public Works that holds thousands of gallons of fuel. That could be I don't know how many it would be, 2, 3, or 4 megawatt batteries instead, which could be powered by solar and wind. And so in a difficult situation, we could have unlimited supply of power to the public works where it's most needed in an emergency. These are elements to the technology that's coming with electrification, which I don't think I've heard too much about tonight. Electric vehicle power stations in homes can be done because of the code change where they take the load, steady load, it was spoken to by a resident, instead of the spike load on the panel. So panels as small as 125 amps are capable of taking this. There's no need for big changes there. I'm not really asking a question. I wanted to try to find a question in it, but I wanted to bring up that whole business, because battery storage, if everywhere to go that way, could be worked into the code somewhere that was required. So in my opinion, solar ready, EV ready, which is coming, would also imply a battery storage ready, which provides the resilience that we're looking for in Colwood, I believe. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Byron, that might have, in light of this discussion.
Chair, if I may, that goes back to what I would have highlighted at the start. So that term net zero with the BC Energy Step Code, that is the intent with that, is that we're going to be seeing a lot of the technologies on site that house can sort of maintain itself that way. And as you've also heard tonight, in turn, reducing that demand as well would be the theory. So yeah, we'll see a lot of changes in the near future for sure.
Okay, if you want to go to the next slide, the one that says comparison. Oh, next one. Comparison one. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one that tells the whole story to me, actually. You know, that's how I see this. So this is per household right now. So if you were to draw a nice pie chart and you were to put each of those categories in it, where does the 1988 old home sit? What percentage of that piece of pie?
Large part.
Yeah, I would say so. So I hate to use this term, but you know, we're basically putting a lipstick on a pig right now. Because we are, I mean, it's good. I mean, I support what we're doing. So don't get me wrong. Don't ever get all, don't go lynching me here, but it's just that the biggest problem is the old homes and the retrofits, but that's a different question for a different time. And I understand that because there's economic issues there, big time. But that really tells me, because basically that's 37 homes of the new 2022 ELR4 homes would produce the same amount of GHGs as one of the old 1988 households. That's what that tells me. I just look at my.
Yeah, and there were, and if I may respond to that, you know, certainly wanted to highlight that existing construction is considered the high hanging fruit and new construction is the low. So would not be an easy task to decarbonize that, if that's the term we want to use, the existing stock. But you can see it does contribute quite a bit. So,
because you know, the way I look at this, there's no, yeah, it's almost impossible for us to hit net zero at 2050 by doing just this. Like, we have to do something more drastic here. Like, we'd almost have to go like negative here, right? I'm just doing the math in my head right now, and something just isn't making sense here. So we got an issue.
Yeah, we definitely wanted to highlight the work ahead for sure. So that is a, you know,
Sorry.
like you say, it is a different conversation.
It's not your issue. I mean, what you did is you presented just enough information that it's made me really thinking. I got a little afraid here. I went, oh my God, I'm not gonna make it. You know, I don't know. Anyways, on that note, it was all the information was there. It was really good. I don't think we're going to resolve my problem tonight. That's for darn sure. So I think what I'll do is I'll go to a motion for the recommendation, staff recommendation. Okay, Councillor Day and Councillor Olson would second it. Discussion. Councillor Day, you want to motivate?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the first place to start is that everything that we do from this point forward is positive for our climate and creates a good roadmap for the future. There have been a lot of investments in helping to retrofit old homes. There is light at the end of the tunnel. It's definitely a journey, but it is possible. But this is a start that when you buy a brand new house in Colwood or Victoria or Saanich or View Royal, that you will be able to feel that you're contributing positively to the future for your kids or your neighbors' kids.
Oh, go ahead.
Chair, if I may, the draft recommendation from committee, it says all Part 9 residential buildings January 1st, 2024. If we were to follow our regular meeting schedule, the next one would be January 8th is where you would see, if council were to make a motion, is where you would see readings. And then the next meeting, January 22nd, would be where a final reading could occur. So just to highlight that.
Okay, good enough. Councillor Olson, do you want to, you were seconder on that, right? Do you want to motivate anything yourself? Or are you fine? Okay, okay. Okay, so any other discussion? I will call the question then. All those in favor? That's unanimous. And at this time, I'm just going to call a 5-minute recess, please. I know everyone needs a health break, so thank you. Back here in 5 minutes, please. Everyone to take their seats and we'll get going here. Okay, we're on to 8.2, which is Royal Bay Community Center Feasibility Study Update. Nafiseh.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Nafiseh Rashidianfar, Tax Planner of the City of Colwood, and I'm gonna start the item 8.2 about the Royal Bay Recreation Center Feasibility Study. Colwood Parks and Recreation Master Plan identifies the city's need to explore the feasibility of a recreation facility in Royal Bay neighborhood. In the summer of 2023, the city initiated a feasibility study for the recreation center to be located in Royal Bay neighborhood. Kasian was retained to develop the conceptual plan and Class D cost estimate for this rec center. This evening, we will present the draft Royal Bay Recreation Center conceptual design and associated Class D cost estimates to seek council endorsement for the purpose of grant application. Kasian has assisted us throughout this process. Dragana Prusenovic from Kasian joined us online to present a summary of this feasibility study to council. I will turn it over to her and please take it away.
Thank you, Nafiseh. Good evening, everybody. My name is Dragana Prusenovic. I am an architect and associate with Kasian. And as Nafiseh has mentioned, we've been working with her and her team over the last several months on a feasibility study for the Royal Bay Recreation Center. We can go to the next slide. So just a brief agenda here. We'll go through an introduction, elaborating on our starting point for this feasibility study. We will then take a look at the space program overview. We'll take a look at the site and some site plan considerations. And then finally, we'll take a look at the conceptual space plan. Next slide, please. So by way of introduction, as Nafiseh mentioned, we started with the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. The master plan identifies a need for a 20 to 30,000 square foot facility that is a community or cultural center of minimum 2 stories, including multi-purpose spaces, a gymnasium, a fitness center, and a daycare center. We use the Parks and Recreation Master Plan recommendation as well as comparable precedent projects and the City of Colwood's or the teams there notes and user meetings to prepare a space program and a conceptual plan for the Royal Bay Rec Center. As a starting point as well, we were provided the most current plans for the Quarry Park Master Plan. It is a desire to locate the Royal Bay Rec Center in that Quarry Park Master Plan, specifically in Phase 2, which is currently under development. So we worked with Gablecraft and Lanark. Working with Gablecraft and Lanark, the city has created a master plan for Quarry Park in Royal Bay. The plan includes recreational playing fields, community spaces, and amenities. And as mentioned, it's split into 2 distinct areas, north and south. And the Royal Bay Rec Center is intended to be in the south portion of that plan. To start off, we developed a vision statement for the Royal Bay Rec Center before we got going with programming and planning. I will read it here just kind of as a guiding thought as we move through the remainder of this presentation. So like the Colwood Park system, the new facility aims to provide a spectrum of local, publicly accessible and affordable community programming and recreational opportunities. Through a mix of multi-use adaptable spaces, the new center will support community health, safety, and wellness. The facility will provide an inviting, inclusive community space that welcomes all Colwood residents, broader community members, and partners. The facility will strengthen our Colwood community and provide a fiscally sustainable response to our community needs today and in the future while showcasing our past. And the key drivers that we identified with the group are to celebrate our natural character, strengthen our connectivity, protect and enhance our environment, encourage our community health and wellness, nurture our partnerships, promote accessibility and inclusiveness, and good governance and accountability. Next slide, please. So we began the exercise with the development of a space program. It was developed on the basis of, as mentioned, the Parks and Rec Master Plan recommendations, a review of recently completed similar facilities, and user consultations. Following those initial consultations, we came up with a space list that totaled approximately 42,000 square feet. Which is a little bit more than what the Parks and Rec Master Plan identified. And so with that in mind and considering costs and potential cost limitations, the project team proposed a two-phase approach. So phase one would provide a series of multi-use flex spaces, including an arts and crafts room that can accommodate a spectrum of activities, as well as a fitness center, which may have some revenue generating opportunities. And in phase two, we parceled out the childcare and gymnasium spaces as an optional future phase. This would also allow for continued coordination between the school district and the city to identify and meet childcare and gymnasium programming needs. Specifically in our conversations with the school district, they noted that further studies may be needed to assess gymnasium requirements or gymnasium capacity with both existing gymnasiums at the existing high school and the gymnasium, potential new gymnasium at a new elementary school adjacent to the site for Quarry Park. Where the childcare program is concerned, the proposed program here includes a variety of accommodations for a number of infants, toddlers, preschool, and after school care. Again, in consultations with the school district, they are also considering childcare in the new elementary school that is intended for this area as well, this site as well. And so in the future, should the childcare program be in a future phase, in a phase two, there may be additional coordination with the adjacent elementary school to ensure that appropriate accommodations are planned for childcare in this location. The childcare program is standalone and can be parceled out and further developed individually or as part of this project, whether it is a phase one or a future phase two. Next slide, please. So taking a look at the site, the Royal Bay Rec Center is intended to be in Royal Bay, specifically in the Latoria South sub area. There on the top right, the Latoria South sub area is in the red. And then on the lower right, we have the subdivision plan from the OCP. In the center there, in the green outline, is the extent of Quarry Park. And in purple is the assumed location for the Royal Bay Rec Center. An exact location has not been selected, but it is anticipated to be incorporated in that second phase of the Quarry Park development. It'll be proximate to playing fields, as well as a community playground, off-leash dog park, and bike skills park, and Quarry Park. To the west, immediately to the west is Latoria Creek. So creating a vibrant and engaging outdoor community space along with that park. As mentioned, the future elementary school is to be located to the north, as noted there on that site overview. And of course, the residential subdivision will be to the east and the south. And there is potential for views toward the Olympic Mountains to the south and across Royal Bay to the east. Next slide, please. And here is just the most current plan for Quarry Park. As mentioned, phase 1 has been much further developed, and my understanding is that Lanark is working on further development of that phase 2. And along with the work that we've done here, we'll be looking at an appropriate location and a final location for the Royal Bay Rec Center within that development. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, because the final location of the rec center within Quarry Park has not been determined, the design team proceeded to develop an ideal conceptual plan arrangement of the program. And that conceptual plan was placed on a potential location in proximity to the Quarry Park development along Quarry Street, to assess the scale of the program in context and to assist in further determination of the final siting of the recreation center within the Quarry Park master plan. So this information and the space plans that we've developed has been shared with the folks who are working on the master plan for the site, to consider potential size of the rec center in determining the most appropriate location within the context of the park. Once again, the conceptual plan, once that site plan has been finalized or further developed, the conceptual plan for the Royal Bay Rec Center should be reviewed again to determine if any adjustments or revisions are needed based on its final location on the site and based on its final siting. General planning blocks were used to illustrate area required for exterior functions. So there in green, we see some exterior space simply to show how much exterior area would be required for functions related to the recreation center. Once again, these functions would be further incorporated in the development of the Quarry Park master plan to ensure that both the needs of the recreation center and the park itself are met and integrated appropriately. Next slide, please. And here, taking a look at that conceptual space plan for the rec center itself. In the middle there are the ground level and the upper level of phase 1, and to the right are the ground level and the upper level for phase 2. So phase 1 is a 2-story facility. It has an efficient and compact layout. It's organized to maximize connectivity for users of the space between the related functions. It has potential for a double height entrance that leads into a central community living room. So this is an open space for visitors of the recreation center to be able to rest, gather, an informal kind of space in the center of the building. There are a series of service spaces to the north and the west of level 1. So in the grid are building services. On the west side of that level 1 area are things like washrooms, change rooms, bike storage and associated facilities. There's also a little bit of a canteen that can be accessed both off of that community living room space and the outside. Community spaces that are located along the south face of both levels and the east face of level 2 to maximize daylighting and use. So here we have some of those multi-use spaces. We have 2 smaller multi-use rooms, as well as a room dedicated for arts and crafts. So kids, adults, arts and crafts classes could take place there. And on the second level, there's a larger multi-use space for larger gatherings. As well, on the second level to the west is that fitness center, and to the north are administrative spaces. When we take a look at phase 2, the idea here is that we would add to the west and south of the building. So to the west, we would be a potential future gymnasium. To the south of that, a single-story daycare, and then to the south of the daycare would be those daycare required exterior spaces, exterior play spaces associated with that program. Again, I'll stress that once the Quarry Park master plan is further developed, these conceptual plans should be reviewed once more to ensure that the plan still makes sense within the final context, and any adjustments needed based on that final siting are made to once again maximize both the site and the opportunities of the site and the interaction of the building with the surrounding areas within Quarry Park. That is all I have here. Thank you so much. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, that's great. I'll open the questions up to council. Councilor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair, I guess a couple things. One item I noted was a key driver to nurture our partnerships, and the partners I see identified are the obvious ones: West Shore Parks and Rec, as well as SD 62. But for me, I think there's a second tier of partners that we should have some degree of consultation with, groups such as the Village Initiative, which very active in the community and would certainly be a user at least of a facility like this. JDF Soccer, I know, has come to the table expressing interest in being active in the parks plan, which could lead into some facility usage. And some of these groups bring grant money and things with them as well. So I think we need to make sure that we aren't forging ahead on this, assuming that our only partners are the two that are listed. So just one thought for me. And going back to the slide on, and this might just be nitpicking a little bit, but the site plan consideration slide, I just was concerned about that one there on the right hand side. Sorry, it's blocked by the piece there. Like, the conceptual design of this shows a building and then this sort of L shape that bleeds into what would be usable space for athletics and other things. And I don't understand, when I see a big white rectangle, why we wouldn't make more effective use of the space. And I guess this is early concepts, but we have a limited amount of space, and I think there's different types of parks in our community. There's those passive parks, which are very important, just tree canopy, where you don't even necessarily go into them, they just exist. There's others that are sort of like Latoria Creek Park, that are trail networks, nature parks. And then you have an area like this where, really this is going to be an active, engaged, user-centric park. So I'd be a little bit concerned if we were designing the first phase or designing this building and essentially giving up what could amount to an athletic field there. So I would hope that the conceptual drawings change a little bit as we move forward. But otherwise, I would say I'm a big supporter. I think we need this. I think our community is called for this. I'm absolutely 100% in favor. I think in the Royal Bay neighborhood, there's a need for something like this. It rectifies, in my opinion, what was an oversight in Latoria North when we lost the neighborhood house there. So this is a long overdue solution to something that's missing in the community.
Thank you very much, Councilor Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I am just building on exactly the same idea of community service agencies that exist. There's a great deal, number of them. There seems to be a need right now for collaboration. There's a shortage of space, but I was wondering if professionally there's a distinct difference between calling a facility like this a recreation center versus a community center. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that has a major effect on the actual facility and what designs that results in. I do think that to bring in the consultation level would be great on top of this program, which I love this idea of the park. I've support this a great deal, but I'd like to see more opportunity for the input from these community service agencies of every shape and size, so that perhaps they would increase the fundability of this project. It was just a question about calling it a rec center versus a community center, if there was any distinct difference there. Does anybody know?
You call in the title, it's funny, in the agenda title, you called it a community center and it brought a smile to my face. And then I started reading rec after that and going, okay. So yeah, what is the answer?
Thanks for the great question to the chair. This is the feasibility studies just for the purpose of grant application, and you're right. We actually had that discussion that isn't going to be the community center or the rec center, but I believe that in the next phase, based on the Quarry Park as a whole, we can determine that it will be actually community center or just a recreation center. But what we discussed so far, it is more likely to be the community center. That is the purpose that we have, but sort of answering to the question that Councillor Ward had, there will be more update coming along in Q1 2024 about the Quarry Park. So I feel like by the time we have that update, we have the little pieces of the puzzle together, and it's more understandable.
Great, thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. We all are thinking very alike because a couple of my questions have already been asked, so that's good. My next question that I have on my list is whether or not West Shore Parks and Rec has expressed interest in providing support the way that they do for the school spaces for this site.
We did have a sort of collaboration session with them. We did take their intake for the conceptual design, and I believe that in the future there will be more involved for that. But as I'm saying, we did have the key stakeholder session with Gablecraft, School District, and West Shore Park and Rec, so they are all involved, and it will be ultimately a collective move, including all the key stakeholders.
Great, because I don't want to let either the school district or West Shore Parks and Rec off the hook, because we worked very, very hard to get community space in the Royal Bay High School. And because of all of the population pressures there, we have lost that space as use. It's quite important to me that there's a space for the community to be in our schools as well as in our community centers. I just wanted to mention that I'm looking for this center to also potentially provide intergenerational opportunities in community and health services, which are both things that are offered in the school district, and I lobbied long and hard to make sure that was a possibility. And my very last point is just in regards to accessibility. So far, the concept plan seems to show stairs, not an elevator. And I was curious if it would be possible to consider a third story, given that most of our buildings are getting taller in our newer areas, and given that it's so hard to get a place to put those important amenities. And I can see that there's going to be a lot of pressure, competition for those flex spaces, that I wanted to know if that was architecturally possible.
I'll note that we do have plans for an elevator. I don't know that it's labeled on there, but just from that main lobby, there is also intention to have an elevator right next to that stair. I certainly a third floor is entirely possible. if there is enough program to support it. So if there is additional program that can be located on a third floor is entirely possible. The program that we've developed so far didn't necessitate a third floor.
Awesome, thank you.
Councillor Jordison.
Thank you. This might be early to ask this question, but I know that there's a space still for the fire department. And I'm just wondering if that doesn't go ahead, if there's more space to expand this as well.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
I just-
Inside the building or outside the building?
Like just to expand more fields and that sort of thing, if that doesn't go ahead, if we even know that yet, I guess. We're probably not at that stage.
As far as I remember, I'm not sure that if we discuss about it, did we had any talk about that in our?
Apologies, Your Worship. Councillor Jordanson, if you could repeat the question, I'm just trying to.
So there's a space here beside the elementary school, or kind of, I don't know, beside it, behind it, however you want to. I believe that's the fire department. If the fire department builds a second fire hall, that's where it's supposed to be placed. So I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity, if that doesn't go ahead, to even expand this even more with more outside playing fields and that sort of thing. It's probably just too early on of a question.
We'll take that question and take it to Gablecraft and the other stakeholders, including the fire department, and get back to council if so desired.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Jensen.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. And to answer Councillor Day's question, hopefully, the board at West Shore Parks and Rec is entirely live to this future development, as well as some other opportunities that may arise in neighboring communities. And so it is on the radar for the board to, you know, we're not going to insert ourselves, but if cooperative opportunities like this come up to work to manage a facility, then Mr. Brown is more than prepared to make a submission in that regard on behalf of the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's this is a great start. That's what I can tell you right now. Joanna, it's a really good start. I really like what I see. It brought a smile to my face. This has been one of my little pet peeves too. I used to call it my multi-purpose community facility. And so, you know, I just didn't want it to be called the rec center. That's for sure. That just implies something else altogether. But the other thing that I just want to, I agree with all the other comments. They're great comments. I know right now that I was approached by the executive director of the South Vancouver Island, believe it or not, the South Vancouver Island United Way, and they have a fund that can help us with this thing too. So to have them involved in it too would be really good. The Rotary Club, just another one that should be involved in this process. So you'll probably do this during the public consultation, but I'm just throwing some other names in here because they all said, hey, we want to be in this. So the last comment I'd like to make, and if I can plead with you to do this, there's become this sort of this thing out there right now with the residents of Colwood that becoming disenfranchised. You know, if you don't happen to live in Royal Bay, everything's Royal Bay centric. And this is an overall city community center. And so I just want us to rethink about not calling it Royal Bay Community Center, calling it the Colwood Community Center. It may be a really smart thing to do, actually.
Thanks for that great comment. It's called Royal Bay Recreation Center feasibility study at this stage. But we discussed that we want this facility provide service all over Colwood and beyond Colwood, actually.
Right.
So we had that discussion with all the stakeholders so far, and they all agreed on. In terms of naming, we are more than happy to discuss this further. But I believe that it will come along the next phase, and by the time we are going through the consultation, which is one of the recommendations for tonight, because it's a part of bigger facility as the Quarry Park that we are gonna go to public to seek their input for the
Yeah, I
whole
guess
project.
where my concern was definitely was in the recommendation, when you name something, now it becomes the name, right? So I just want us to be very careful about that. If we just, even if you call it endorses the community center study, feasibility study, I'm being fine with that too. You don't have to name it, but you know, once we start calling it a certain name, that's what it's going to become, as you probably know. So, and I'm just very, very sensitive to this now, very sensitive to this now. So I'm hearing it loud and clear. So it's everyone's tax dollars in this. So, okay. So on that note, I will, yeah, well, I'll make the recommendation then. I'll just read what the motion would be then, that council endorse the community center feasibility study. Won't call it anything for now, for master planning purposes, and direct staff to include Colwood or the community feasibility study to the city's list of shelf-ready projects for potential grant situation. So just want to rechange that, and that staff be directed to include the community center feasibility study as part of the city's current Quarry Park expansion project public consultation. Okay, that's okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Day seconds that. Discussion. Seeing none, I'm going to call the question because I'm going to move this. Anyone oppose? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you very much. Great job, Nafiseh. I guess you're going to have to stand there. You're doing the next one too.
Yes, thank you. It's me again. So eventually about national urban parks. We are here for tonight. We are here tonight for the National Urban Parks feasibility studies. In collaboration with Parks Canada, the city has advanced feasibility studies for potential new national urban parks with an expected park gateway to be centered around the lands located within and around the Fort Rod Hill and Fiskard Lighthouse National Historic Sites. 3 key projects being led by city staff through this collaboration are as follows: ecosystem regeneration strategy, active transportation and public transit improvement studies, and engagement process development strategy. WSP, what consulting group and Barefoot Planning and Design were retained to assist the city with advancing these 3 projects respectively. We are here tonight to provide council with the ecosystem regeneration strategy and connecting Colwood to National Urban Park report, and to seek council endorsement of these plans prior to submission to Parks Canada. The early draft engagement process development strategy is underway, and it will be presented to council in 2024 before submission to Parks Canada. I would like to greet Alana Green and Kirby Delaney from Parks Canada, and Michael Holmes from WSP, as well as Andy Kading from What Consulting Group. Alana may have some words for us from Parks Canada, and then Michael and Andy will present a summary of the projects that we advanced throughout this process.
Okay, great, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Alana Green. I am the project lead for the proposed National Urban Park. I'm with Parks Canada, and I'd like to introduce my colleague here.
Hello, my name is Kirby Delaney, and I'm the establishment coordinator with the field unit representing coastal British Columbia, including Fort Rod Hill and Fiskard Lighthouse, for the establishment of the National Urban Park.
Wow.
So National Urban Parks is a fairly new program for Parks Canada. It holds potential to conserve and restore nature in our cities. It also helps to mitigate the impacts of climate change, improve access to nature, protect and promote local heritage, and advance reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. Through that, the National Urban Parks has 3 core objectives. That is, number 1, conserving nature, 2, connecting people with nature, and 3, advancing reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. So through these shared values, it's been really lovely to work with the City of Colwood, particularly with Ian and Nafiseh. We've had really positive relationships, and we look forward to those continuing. Thank you.
And Michael Holm from the WSP will present the ecosystem regeneration strategy.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much. My name is Michael Holm. I'm with WSP. I'm here to present a quick overview of the ecosystem regeneration strategy for the waterfront. Just a quick summary of the presentation. What we'll go through is a bit of a summary of the overview, the purpose, the rationale and the vision behind what the ecosystem regeneration strategy is for, so the goals, the areas in the waterfront, which you're probably very familiar with, the types of ecosystems within them, and then the integration of those ecosystems into the waterfront development and essentially the next steps that would take place. So just to give you a quick overview, the ecosystem regeneration strategy is essentially an extension of some of the work that you've already seen and sort of discussed already regarding the waterfront stewardship plan. The purpose behind the regeneration strategy is to develop it further and set out a series of steps that identify the important elements of what the ecosystems within the waterfront will eventually become when the infrastructure elements are also in place. Obviously, with Parks Canada, the Urban National Parks development of the new classification, the location of the Fort Rod Hill and the lighthouse are also very similarly located to the waterfront. And knowing that ecosystems don't necessarily have boundaries in the sense that they're not like a parcel of land and stuff like that, they kind of blend in. So when Fort Rod Hill is doing their ecosystems as well, we also need to be mindful that the waterfront essentially is connected to it as well. So essentially the purpose of the ecosystem regeneration strategy is to develop the framework and the strategy on how, when, what we should regenerate in terms of the ecosystem, and tie that in with Fort Rod Hills National Park as well. As we sort of set forward, we try to develop a couple of vision statements related to the project and the environmental and element to it. And in summary, the vision statement is we want to create a waterfront development that should regenerate the local ecosystem in its natural state, which integrates future infrastructural upgrades and protects the ecosystems, as well as responding to future climate changes initiatives. So that's just, I kind of summarize that as well. So how does this all sort of relate to the waterfront itself? As I said, you guys are probably very familiar with the waterfront master plan as well, and you'll see the master plan has been developed into a series of areas: the Colbert Beach, the Millburn, Perimeter Park, Lagoon West Park. These are sort of key zones along the waterfront. However, when you're looking at it in terms of the ecosystems, we have much more sort of, these don't sort of follow within those same zones. We've identified that you have up to 5 different ecosystems on the waterfront itself. One being the dune regeneration, which is the area between the high water table and the road, and then the salt marsh and the riparian zones that are on the other side that are closely related to the lagoon. Hillside, which is further south from the washroom, and Lagoon West Park. So all of these different areas within the waterfront have a slightly different environmental need. So the ecosystem regeneration report kind of dives into each one of these areas of ecosystems within the plan. I've done a slide for each one of these, and I'm not going to read them all out. I'll just kind of give you a bit of the summaries. But what we try to do is we've identified the regeneration priorities, the interventions, and landscape restrictions, which are more specifically related to when the waterfront infrastructures essentially will be developed in terms of like the multi-use pathways, the parking, and the work that eventually will be be developed later on. So fairly common in terms of most ecosystem regenerations and projects. Removal of invasive species is pretty common. That would probably be number one. Creating beach access routes, particularly on the dune. This will be really, really important in the sense that if we're trying to regenerate the ecosystem there in relation to this, the other thing you can't really take these into isolation. You also have to take the waterfront master plan into it, because the waterfront master plan also suggests that the sand dunes also need to be raised as well to help with storm surge and climate change. So when you're doing that, the idea is that we're going to have to regenerate the ecosystem on top of these sand dunes, and providing access points to the parking and the sand dunes is really quite critical. Also, the other element that we looked at in terms of coming up with a long-term management plan of you're going to probably have to invest a little bit of time in over maintenance in terms of ensuring that any sort of invasive species that we take out, we also have to sort of make sure they don't come back, and that's all part of the ongoing maintenance essentially. That's just kind of a quick summation. When you're looking into the salt marsh generations, very similar in terms of invasive species. Salt marsh and the riparian area on side of the lagoon, one of the key elements is there's an informal gravel pathway that is being used, looking at potentially removing that and to use that extra area to bring in additional, to help regenerate the ecosystem in there and help sort of promote more pollinators and give the opportunity for the plants and animals in there to reestablish along the lagoon edge. Hillside, this one's a slightly different one in the sense just south of the bathroom along Ocean Boulevard. There is a fairly large forest hillside area where we did cover a small wetland in there as well. So once again, we've got a bunch of invasive species we need to consider looking at, and then coming up with a bit of a strategy that is slightly different from the dunes, because it is far more riparian in terms of a forest ecosystem that we would look at. The last one is the Lagoon West Park. This is a large public park area, essentially, where you're going to have a lot of mix between recreation and very much a nature-based park. So it's kind of combining the two uses. This one has a fairly large, extensive amount of invasive species that we'd have to consider. And really, it's about sort of planning the park for the future to be able to handle people going in it and also being more of a nature-based park as well. That's a very, very quick summation. I know there's a lot of detail in there, and this is just kind of a quick overview of what we did as part of the strategy is just identify what each one of these ecosystems requires in order to go forward. And part of the whole idea behind the strategy is just to set a bit of the blueprint to way forward on when we move into the next stage, what you should do in terms of how we should structure it. Now, when we're looking at the improvements into the waterfront, which is, I think that's going to be one of the later presentations later on this evening, is that when we're looking at how we integrate the ecosystem into the waterfront improvements, we also studied and looked at, trying to determine what is the minimum width of these sand dunes in relation to the multi-use path, the heights and the various shapes and forms to try to make them very natural. And the idea is that all part of the regeneration is supposed to be very organic in the sense that we want to reestablish the plants, the existing plants and biota that are on the site. So whether it's harvesting early on, doing site investigations early on in order to determine what is there and what can be saved and what can be used. Protection is extremely important going forward. For any regeneration areas, we want to look at having some sort of fencing or signage and education component in order to sort of really, really get people aware of what we're trying to do here in terms of when we sort of reestablish the ecosystem. And really, at the end of the day, the desired impact that we're trying to get out of the ecosystem generation is essentially to increase public awareness of the ecosystem in and around the lagoon. Obviously, successful regeneration is quite critical, but then obviously the collaboration with the Urban National Park and Parks Canada will also give the waterfront the opportunity to really expand that whole urban national park and sort of extend that into the whole waterfront itself. Where we're at in terms of the overall process on the regeneration, we're just really at phase 1. Phase 2 is really where you're at. The next stage is where we're going to go out, where we recommend going out, doing the actual investigation, finding out what actual plants we have, species, animals and stuff like that, and the documentation. And then that will start to lead further down into an actual implementation plan that would be carried out with the waterfront development as well. So that in a nutshell is really what the ecosystem regeneration strategy is. Just a strategy and a blueprint to integrate as the waterfront development goes forward with the Urban National Park.
Thank you very much. Oh, sorry. Councillor Day? Michael?
Thank you. I just had a question for you, Brian. It's not that easy.
No, sorry.
I'm thrilled with the work that you've done. It's great to see yet another round, because there has been 20 years of history of working at Esquimalt Lagoon, where we have done a lot of invasive removals. I think my very first parks plan began with a discussion of Scotch broom. And so it's been going on for a long time. I think everything that you've presented tonight is the right thing to do. But one of the things that I feel a little bit sad about is there's a lot of community investment in time down at the lagoon, trying to do exactly this work. We did dune restoration. We had numerous groups working to build plant material both at Bee Creek and at Royal Roads to have them sufficiently salt tolerant to be able to be replanted down at the lagoon. There was work done with Camosun College and University of Victoria. And it's kind of disheartening, but that's kind of the way Scotch broom is, that, you know, we thought we got the last sprig one year. Of course, it never lasts. But I just wonder about the history. Did you look at any of the history of the things that have happened there? We've done tide monitoring and sea bulk reports and you name it.
Yeah, definitely. We did obviously meet with the city officials as well, and obviously I met with board as well, and it gave us a bit of a history on some of the previous dune restoration attempts. And one of the key takeaways that we got from all of that is really coming down to the protection and the monitoring and the education component that goes into it. Like, you do all this work to do the restoration, and if the public doesn't know that they can't walk right through the sand dune, they're just going to trample and undo all the work that you do. So we did talk about a lot about that in terms of, and then the one thing that the master plan already accounts for is trying to limit those access points. So, this strategy just kind of outlines the game plan, but the real trick will be kind of the next phase of the waterfront planning, is like how they kind of go about that too. And, some of those solutions, we talked about potentially ideas of coming up with test areas and education components, rolling out a pilot program where, maybe it's 100 meters of the beachfront that you roll out and use that as the education component for the public to say, here's what we're doing, here's why we're fencing this off, this is what we're trying to achieve.
That's really key for sure.
It isn't, I maybe didn't say that in my presentation, it is in the report as a recommendation as well. But all of those things.
Yeah, no, I love how your report sets that out, and I really appreciate it. I just wanted to not forget all the hard work of many, many, many volunteers over many, many years to try to, we had different plots where we tried different methods to see which one works the best, and it really is that protection that did them in. I know personally, I spent quite a few years down there joining volunteers at events, only to come the following weekend and see kids ripping out what you just planted. And, you know, they were just being kids. Their sword fighting was with, you know, dune grass.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious and lovely, but disheartening if you were the one that planted it. So it's a really, really important part. And we have a lot of groups that would help. So thank you so much for giving a great overview of where we have to do it all over again. But thank you.
Yeah, and well, the thing with the regeneration, it's there will be a bit of a trial and error component through it as it sort of rolls out, because you know we're dealing with very much organic plants and stuff like that. So and that's part of the phasing strategy, is rolling it out and then kind of learning a little bit about what worked and what didn't, and then revising and kind of going into the next stage.
Great. Yeah. And I think liaising with some of those volunteer groups who've done it would be really helpful and informative.
Thanks very much. I'm gonna keep this move. Well, Councillor Jensen.
Let me help, your worship. I'm happy to move the staff recommendation. I think this is a great opportunity here, and there's a lot of great work been done up to now, and I think we need to keep the ball rolling. So I'm happy to move that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have seconder, Councillor Ward? And any discussion?
Your worship, if I may,
Yes, please.
I believe there's another presentation.
Oh, Mr. Keating, right? I believe. Your package was good though. It had everything in it. Good package. Go ahead. Andy Keating.
Yep, Andy Kading, Watt Consulting Group. I'll just consider this a ringing endorsement of the work that we've done already, so thank you. I'll wait till the slides pop up. Oh, you're okay. So I work for Watt Consulting Group. We were hired by the city to do the active transportation feasibility study for the corridor which runs along Ocean Boulevard. I will try and make this quick, because I know it's a long evening. All right, let's see. Great, okay. So quick project overview. I won't bore you with the parts of the study that detail all of the way that this works into the plans of Colwood. But from an engineering perspective, and I'm an engineer, this is the meat of the study from an active transportation perspective. So what we're looking at here is the overview of the project and its critical connections. I'm going to start at the north and work my way down. We're going to look at the green line here. Ocean Boulevard's the focus of our study. At the top, near the letter B, we have the Galloping Goose connection, and where Ocean Boulevard and Belmont Road meet. North of that, in that general area, we have the Triangle lands, you know, one of the main parts of Colwood, the rec center, all of those aspects. It connects into there. We move down Ocean Boulevard. We sweep around. We come all the way down to the Fort Rod Hill Park entrance. We continue down Ocean Boulevard. We come to what is a interesting little informal connection that gets you up into the D&D housing lands via Belmont Road. There's also a connection down there in some of the disused roads for what's called the Cavendish lands that are controlled by one of the local entities. So it's an interesting recreation opportunity. We sweep all the way down and we get to the focus of the last presentation, which is the lagoon. So Ocean Boulevard positions itself very nicely as a connection between the Esquimalt Lagoon, everything that's happening at the Beachlands development, and then brings you right up to a connection to the Galloping Goose and to the, one of the central parts of Colwood that's going to see a lot of new development, especially if you think of the Triangle lands and the Gateway lands in that whole area. So the road, although it runs through a natural area, actually has a very interesting active transportation connection possibility. The fact that you can get the entire Beachlands development all the way up to the Goose means that you've then integrated with a larger regional active transportation network. It's a pretty unprecedented opportunity. I've been out to the site, seen Ocean Boulevard. The path can fit quite nicely into the available space. So as far as these kind of things go, this is a pretty, there's not a lot of hurdles to overcome. It slots in very, very nicely. So I'm going to walk you through what this is going to look like. Here is an example of rendering of what the path will look like when it's built. We've got the existing travel lanes on the side. It's the path itself. This is shown as a 5-meter iteration. You can see there's ample space for people to walk and bike to navigate effectively. There is a buffer between the roadway and the path that is vegetated. We'll talk more about that in a second. And then at the end, you've got kind of a little buffer that just keeps you away from what is the existing area, the existing wooded area today. So the details are, we've got the existing roadway and the existing edge of pavement. That is all existing, and that does not move in the design that we proposed. Everything happens off of that. And what you've got is a bioswale that will be a vegetated barrier that can help control stormwater if designed correctly without a lot of additional, that won't hook up to a sewer system or a stormwater overflow system. That'll just be stormwater treatment on its own. It'll transport down to the lagoon in a nice natural way. The path has bollard lighting incorporated, similar to the bollard lighting that's been in other projects. This could be something that's very nature friendly, low temperature, low luminosity, wildlife friendly. There are 3 principal connection points that are important to talk about as far as this plan goes. And I'm going to start at the north and work my way down. I'm going to start at a proposed roundabout. Then we'll talk about Fort Rod Hills entrance and the Lagoon Bridge. So at Ocean Boulevard and Belmont Road, the 2 streets come together in a Y configuration. And it's not the most user-friendly intersection. When taking a look at this, we saw that there was an obvious opportunity to make some improvements, and our recommendation would be a roundabout. What I'll draw your attention to first is the connection to the Galloping Goose Trail that you can see at the bottom of your screen. There is currently today a little informal gravel connection. The recommendation would be to formalize that, make that nicer, bring you across Belmont Road in a nice protected crossing. Then you connect to the multi-use path that goes up and then down running along Ocean Boulevard. There is an obvious connection to the existing cycling facilities that are north of this image along Ocean Boulevard. There's some on-street bike lanes today that go past that park and ride. You would want to integrate those into this system. So what this looks like in its final form to be determined. This is an example that we put together of what something like this could look like. It's pretty much an oval roundabout that separates the Y and provides a nice, provides some guidance into an otherwise kind of odd intersection. We're working on a similar project in Oak Bay that's taking a very similar intersection and looking at it. And, as a transportation engineer, whenever I see odd streets coming in at odd angles, I think roundabout. And this is, an example of what that could look like. Here's a couple examples of other oval roundabouts, just to kind of give you an idea of what they look like. The one on the left, I think, is the most important and salient example. Important to note that's from the UK, so everyone's driving on the wrong side of the road. But these things can be shoved into all sorts of weird configurations. The Fort Rod Hill entrance, this is a project that's looking at the National Urban Park. So how do you connect people in an environmentally friendly way through active transportation and transit to the National Park system? So in one iteration that's been discussed, and it's important to note, the final form of this one to be determined. But in this version, the entrance to Fort Rod Hill will convert to a one-way entrance, and the other now available lane would be converted into an active transportation entrance. So you just get off the multi-use path, go at a crossing, and then drop right into the park. And then you would come out the same way. Traffic would then, normal vehicle traffic would exit through a point more southerly, as would the buses. The final piece is the connection to the Lagoon Bridge and the lagoon in general. As you come down towards the waterfront, the conditions change quite a bit. The roadway narrows, it becomes a more sensitive area. The general recommendation would be to squish the path and the road together, physically separate them with a barrier so that you're not taking up too much precious right-of-way towards the edge of the lagoon. Bring them right up to the Lagoon Bridge and then figure out a configuration to get them across. In this version, we're showing that the active transportation users go on the roadway. And there's a little transition point because if you're coming to the north and you want to get to the multi-use path on the left, on the west side, you have to make a little transition point. That's what that pink box is for, the transition area for cyclists. So that's pretty much the form of the active transportation corridor. There are cost estimates that have been provided. My understanding they need to be refined a little bit. And that's all I've got. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Okay, open it up for questions. Councilor Day?
Thank you. I'm just wondering if you've considered the environmental values in that area for that multi-use path, because that's quite a dramatic multi-use path. I mean, I know that makes it a better path, but it also you're at the toe of the lagoon where we have the heron nesting grounds as well.
Of course, of course. There's the environmental impact of the entire path, including the forested area north of here. You know, there's some rock facing, there's trees of all sorts of different types. So a couple of things that are important to note. One, the total width of the path, we're showing the, you know, the super nice version, the 5 meters with the generous swale separation. That could be compacted in theory into something a little less impactful if desired. And then the important part is down by the lagoon. That final form, you know, there are some very significant and lovely trees that are kind of right where this would go. So how do you navigate all of that? How do you navigate the sensitive subsurface area? How do you make sure that erosion doesn't impact, you know, this is very close to the edge of where that lagoon is. You know, make sure that all species are accounted for. There's further study that's needed. This is a conceptual design. It shows that this path can be added, and it can be added without too much sacrifice. One way that you could maybe deal with it here, especially, is if the existing roadway bent eastward a bit. We're looking north here on this picture. We're showing the path just adjacent to the roadway. But if you bend the road a little bit to the east and that area is already disturbed with parking, etc., you could then bring the path in, maybe narrow it up a little bit, and then you're coming ever further away from the lagoon edge in the sensitive areas.
Right. And it's also an area that has a lot of archaeological potential, and that would be something that would, you know, be very difficult to budget around.
Yes, and it'd be my opinion that there's a form to this that would be, you know, could you do this with doing absolutely minimal impact? You know, I don't see a need to do like shoring or a cantilevered walkway or anything that would require, you know, deep excavation in any way, shape, or form. This would be it would be done with that very much in mind.
Thank you.
Thank you. The motion's on the floor. If everyone forgot, just look at 8.3, and I'm going to call the question right now. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carried, unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, for that. Gonna keep this meeting going here. 8.4, if I can get Tyler Pettipies come up, and we're going to talk about the Colwood Waterfront Stewardship Plan Project, Award of Management and Design Services Contract. Tyler, over to you.
Thanks. Good evening. I'm here through the chair tonight to present the staff report for the award of the project management and design services contract in implementing the first phase of the Colwood Waterfront Stewardship Plan, and also requesting that council authorize the mayor and corporate officer to sign the contract with the proponent. Staff require council approval because the value of the contract is greater than corporate signing authority of $250,000. Just to speak to the procurement process, a RFP, request for proposals, was published by the city, and we received 3 proposals from qualified companies. Selection committee was assembled and graded the proposals based on the criteria published in the RFP, and the proponent with the highest combined score was Associated Engineering Limited. The submitted cost for the work is within the city's budget or projected budgeted cost for the project, and we recommend awarding the contract to the proponent. We're all excited to implement this next phase of the Colwood Waterfront Stewardship Plan. So once it's awarded, staff will engage the successful proponent to enter in a contract for services and start the project management and functional design stage. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, happy to answer.
Thanks very much, Charlie. Councillor Jensen.
Briefly, so I noticed it wasn't the least expensive option. And I'm not the math genius here, but I mean, perhaps you can explain to the community how we're bypassing sort of a lesser expensive submission and proposing a more expensive option. I take it there's some mythical engineering reasons.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I almost knew it was going to come up tonight, because it is the highest proponent. It's not typical to the construction management where we just award the lowest bid. We wanted the project. Well, it does follow the standard template for RFP proposals. So that's 20% for costs, and then the grading that was outlined in the report. So what we felt was most important was engaging a consultant that was best suited in realizing the Colwood Waterfront Stewardship Plan. It's a very high profile and important project for the community. And yes, cost is an important aspect of the RFP process, but we did give weighting to other factors, such as an understanding of the scope of the project, specialized project, local, coastal, and contextual knowledge, providing multidisciplinary team, emphasis on innovation and nature-based design solutions, and a bunch of other criteria that was very important for the selected proponent to have.
So thank you. I appreciate the time spent in going through the nitty gritty that perhaps wouldn't jump out at me. So I'll yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Olsen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the staff recommendation. I think it's really exciting that we're going to be able to hit the ground running. And so the sooner we move this, the sooner we can get to work.
Seconder. Councillor. I just went blank here. Yeah. Councillor Kim. Discussion. I just have a quick question under discussion. And so are we going to see a high level plan? Like, are we within plan right now? Are we getting all the things done we have to, because we have to get this money spent, right? I believe there's a time limit on this, Jen, right?
Yes, there's a sunset date of 2028 that the first phase has to be implemented.
So is there a high level project? So we basically know when everything has to be done?
Yep, we have it all detailed out. It is going to be a lengthy process for the environmental and archaeological permitting.
Okay.
So that's, like you said, why we're trying to hit the ground running, getting a consultant involved and implementing the plan.
So, but that wasn't in your package though. I didn't see it, or did I see it?
The timeline for the project, I think I provided a very high level.
Oh, I saw the little triangle type things.
Yes, the triangle.
Is that the
colors? Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. That's
okay. Thanks. Councillor Dave.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to note that when we last met with our Indigenous nations, they indicated that they were working on the issues around fish and aquatic aquaculture, and very interested. And I'm interested to see how this fits with that. So I just think that it's important that we make sure we keep that communication flowing as we're working on the land. We want to understand the water too.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Motion carried. We move on to 8.5. Josh Andrews, thank you very much.
Thank
you. Hi there. That's the Galloping Goose Bridge Award. Management Services Contract.
Thank you. This will sound very familiar. So tonight I'm presenting the report for the award of the management services. We're asking that council consider the recommendation that the project management services contract for the Galloping Goose project pedestrian bridge go to McElhaney in the amount of $340,030. and that council authorized mayor and corporate officer to sign the agreement for services contract. With the proponent, staff requires this because it is above the $250,000 corporate signing authority. Similar procurement process, as you just heard, went to RFP. We received 3 proponents submitted the proposals, which were weighed by the selection committee, and ultimately McElhaney was the highest aggregate score. So council recommend awarding the contract to McElhaney, and once awarded, we'll finalize that design build contract, sign it with SureSpan, and then SureSpan can again hit the ground running to get the bridge designed and built. If you have any questions, I'd be very happy to take them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jensen.
No question, your worship. I'll move the recommendation despite it not being the cheapest. And I'm assuming.
Tyler has a really good answer for that. If you,
I'm assuming the same answer applies, so I will move the recommendation. Thank you, worship.
Second, Councillor Grove seconds it. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. Thank you very much. Thanks very much. Desiree, you're on. That's the rezoning 23-24 Sooke Road. Well, actually, I think we need, there was a couple people that during the public participation were holding off for this. So if I can get. No, some new people. Asked to help with hold. Does anyone from the public want to speak at this time? Okay, seeing none. Have to push the button.
Well, gotcha. Hi, my name is Kelly Mason. I'm a resident of Colwood, and I've been born and raised here all my life. And I wanted to bring up some development issues. Being 30 years old, I work for the city now. I just got hired a couple months ago, so I'm on what's called the spare board. So I get called in daily and sometimes daily. And I wanted to bring up raising a family and potentially buying a house one day. But, you know, circumstances, obviously COVID and everything. And with the way that the real estate market is, and compared to 10 years ago and something like that, it's almost next to impossible for us younger generation to save up to, well, in comparison, my brother, who's 6 years older than me, bought a condo in Oak Bay for $210,000 6-7 years ago. And that condo sold for over double. And so I'm asking the council if there's any chances to help approve processes on condos for short-term, not even short-term, but long-term single homes that we as younger people can help, or that you guys can help us in any kind of way. I know that there's being developments constantly being waiting for approval, and we're just, as a younger generation, waiting for these turnovers to eventually come our way. But with raising prices and interest rates and all of the things that are happening for us younger generation, I'm wondering, what are this processes? Like, can we expedite some of these processes in regards to developing more for us so that we can eventually, you know, get into the market? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Okay, we'll turn it over to Desiree now. If there's no other people from public, we'll get one other.
Colwood resident, 2408 Marlene Road. Good evening, council. I too have an interest in more options for low-income housing. I've seen coworkers, friends, family all move over the area. because of the affordability here. And I think as long as it fits with the community plan, so obviously not dropped in a cul-de-sac with single family housing that's 2-story, lower income development in an area that's close to walking distance from Canada Mall and bus routes and those such things, and also meeting development. There's been lots of development along Sooke Road that's kind of in a similar mindset, so it kind of fits that corridor there. Then I'm in support of providing lower income housing for the area.
Thank you very much. Pardon? Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Chris Sparks and I rent at 328 Whale Road, the Westridge Landing. And my apartment's quite expensive for how small it is. So like the area there is very good for more expansion. There's lots of grocery stores. The Galloping Goose is there, the 95 rapid transit. So you wouldn't be clogging up more Colwood Crawl. And the more units we get, the better chances the prices can come down. So yeah, I would support more building in the area, and there is room for it though. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any others? If seeing none, Desiree, over to you, please.
Thank you. So the next item in your agenda is the rezoning application and returning with information on the feasibility of incorporating 2322 Sooke Road into the proposal. So you've heard from both the applicant in writing and the property owner of 2322 Sooke Road that there wasn't an agreement that was able to be reached in order to incorporate 2322 Sooke Road into the proposal. And so the applicant is here tonight requesting rezoning to the CD40 zone, which is in the agenda under bylaw readings. There are other options available to council, including either giving this amending bylaw first and second reading, or not giving it first and second reading, or we can also return with additional information to support your decision tonight. And I believe there was a question about the possibility of including access off of Linlark. So maybe I'll just invite John up to say a few words about that.
Just remind us, John, because this has been ongoing for such a long time. I forgot. I'm in now.
Thank you, Your Worship. Basically, Sooke Road is listed as an arterial road. It is our heaviest traveled road right now. We're expecting probably in the next 20 years in excess of 30,000 cars. Anytime we can get any access off of that road and onto a side road, that's certainly the better way to go. One of the issues we have with Linlark is at least it's a controlled access. And I can understand the concerns from the residents with regards to vehicle volume. But, you know, quite frankly, local roads can handle 1,500 cars. That intersection could easily handle several hundred. And at peak hour now, with that development, it'll be 20 cars. So it's going to change slightly. I mean, currently your wait times are around 21 seconds to try to get out. Now that's a typical wait time. If you've got somebody that's a little more fearful, it can be longer. Or if you've got drivers that are in less better moods, they're not going to be compliant to let you kind of cut in. You know how it works in Victoria, you let people in all the time. But after development, it's technically going to be 27 seconds. So it's going to go from 20 to 27. It's not going to be a massive change. It's down at it's about 55 meters from the intersection. So the vast majority of Linlark will still be able to experience that residential neighborhood feel, playing road hockey on the road and all that, because those cars aren't going to go back there. And with regards to construction, we could look at a policy within our developments if we wanted to, that we can bring back to council that talks about a parking policy for construction workers, asking them to give us a parking plan. I've used that before in other places where I've worked, where we've said, okay,
you're gonna have your foundations built, tell us how many employees are gonna be, there's gonna be 30, tell us where those 30 people are gonna park, and they're not gonna park on the street. So, you know, they can talk to a church that's not being used during the workday and then use a bus to bring them there. So it's a cost to a developer, but it's something we can explore if council's looking for that. So that can help mitigate the impacts of construction as well.
That's a great idea.
Right?
Great idea. This one was for information only. I believe, Mr. Earl, there's no recommendation for this particular item.
Thank you, Your Worship. There is no recommendation, but the next item on council's agenda is derivative of this issue, and that's first and second reading of the bylaw.
Right. Any other questions for Desiree at this point in time? Councillor Jordison, then followed by Councillor Day.
Thank you. I actually had questions for John. Just to remind me, for this location, is it going to be a right in and a right out?
This time we haven't determined that, but currently you're allowed to make that left. So we'll probably keep that left in there, but if it becomes an issue and the TIA doesn't speak to it becoming an issue, but if we start seeing any kind of cross frequency, that'd be something we'd change, and we'd have to do something physical to prevent that. The other side of that is we could look at some storage lanes in there, but as council's seen with the traffic model, we're going to be moving probably pretty quickly on that section of Sooke Road to expand it to our full with regards to dual lanes. At that time, there'll be no left turn for sure.
Okay, and the other question I had about, I've heard a lot about parking. The current residents are concerned about the building having parking on their street and excess parking. Is there not like a permit parking or something that could be enforced if that became an issue where there's people within the building constantly parking all over?
Well, certainly, yes, that's always an option with regards to city streets to not allow on-street parking, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. So if we want to see the construction parking policy, is that something that would take time to put in place, or is that something that could be achieved relatively quickly?
That wheel's already been invented, so I could bring forward something for council to consider rather quickly.
Yeah, because I think that there's two issues that I've heard from the community, not just in this location, but in other locations where a more densely populated development takes place adjacent to an older neighborhood. Those older neighborhoods are experiencing their streets filling up with the residents from the more dense development. And they're also really feeling the pinch from the construction timeframe, not just the inconvenience, the dust, the noise, but also the vehicles parking all over the adjacent roadways. So those are two things that I think we need to be prepared to address, not just with this development, but with each development that comes forward adjacent to an existing neighborhood.
Yeah, that policy will have a bylaw impact. That's how we use that policy. So what we'll do is we'll take a $10,000 security from the developer. Every time their employees get one warning. Our bylaw people go by, check out the license plate. If it's not local, give them a warning. Next time that we just take $200 from the developer. When it starts coming down and gets down from that 10,000, they give us another 10,000, and that's how it works. In other places it proved to be pretty effective because there's no. They sign on the dotted line that they agree to this. So it's part of the development piece.
Thank you. And just for council's awareness, I won't be supporting this project going forward. That's just my opinion. I like to try to speak to that so that residents know why I vote the way I do. And that is based on a lack of support, and even the support that did exist having evaporated. Thank you.
Councillor Ward.
A little, maybe we're veering off topic here, but I'd like to speak to something that I'm hearing. It's a little alarming to me, is that this notion of 2 tiers of parking eligibility in Colwood. As far as I understand, this project is compliant with parking bylaws. All of our high density projects that this council has approved are compliant with the parking bylaw. So if we have a concern with the parking bylaw, we should change the parking bylaw. But the notion that someone, I'll use myself as an example, who lives in a higher density project, a townhome, has less right to the street parking than a single family homeowner is frankly nonsense. I pay taxes like everybody else, so do the people in condos. So this is an issue where I think we're viewing it through a lens of, you have a single family home, so the parking in front of your home is yours. Well, it's not, and it never has been. This is the issue we have with talking about folks building out into our property, and we're trying to push the sidewalk line back. I mean, you may have had access to that for many years, and I understand that, but we can't create a two-tiered system. We talk about creating, parking passes. Well, a resident parking pass would be valid for everybody in the condo building as well. So I really want to guard against that kind of slippery slope of saying there's two tiers of citizens, because that's essentially what we're saying when you say, geez, these new residents, and the word is residents, are buying a home. A condo is a home, or there's 3-bedroom homes in this building. How do they have less eligibility to park on a street than somebody in a single family home? That's wrong. And so I will speak up for that every time, because that's creating two tiers of citizens. And even if you want to divide it by economics, well, folks buying townhomes right now are paying more than per capita on their income than people who bought single family homes decades ago. So it doesn't add up any way you slice it. So let's guard against that, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to move into bylaws then, and seeing no other questions for you, Desiree. 9.1. Bylaw number 2003, Colwood Land Use Bylaw Amendment, CD 40, 2324 Sooke, first and second reading. May I get a mover for that, please? Okay. Okay, thank you. So, Council Olson, Council Grove. Discussion. Okay, Councillor Jensen.
I'll try to be quick. I am going to propose a couple of amendments, Your Worship, at this time. I have sent them through to Ms. Lalonde in rough form, just by email. So you should have something there, Marcy, hopefully. The first was, I am going to put it out there for discussion that the development at 2324 Sooke Road have its primary entrance and exit onto Sooke Road. And the second part to that the developer, to the satisfaction of staff, provides suitable off-street parking for employees on site or in the area to minimize impacts to the neighboring streets and residents. And I'm ready to motivate if you wish. Or
Can you put it up, Marcy, by any chance? Okay.
Can you make it smaller? Might be easier for you. While she's doing that, I'm happy to speak, Your
Okay,
Worship.
please. Yeah,
First
you
off,
can
I guess
motivate it.
we need a seconder to make it official, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah, a seconder on this one, please. Okay. Councillor Olson, seconds.
Thank you.
Go
Just
ahead.
for discussion purposes, I know we heard from our engineer. The reason I'm doing this, quite frankly, is we heard one of the primary issues from some of the residents. I didn't hear one person step up and say, don't build this. I heard that there's an issue with, or some concerns on Linlark. So on behalf of those residents, I will put this forward for discussion. Quite frankly, there's entrances and exits all along Sooke Road from one end to the other. And I quite frankly don't think this is going to be the one that breaks the camel's back here. So I would put that forward for discussion. And also the second part, again, we heard concerns specifically for parking surrounding those working on site during the construction, akin to what Mr. Rosenberg has suggested. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you very much.
Better to sever those two things.
Yeah. Could we? Okay, we're gonna sever them. Marcy, are you okay as a seconder on both? Severed? Okay. Council Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no objection to the off-street parking component. I think construction parking is a very separate issue, but on the first issue, I'm vehemently opposed to that. I would remind Councillor Jansen that when the Sooke Road development came up, that's roughly across from Royal Roads area, he argued passionately against the the safety, or for the safety concerns of that one, insisting on a right in, right out. So I'm the juxtaposition of that with this, when we've just heard from our engineer that this is going to be a 4-lane road, really for all intents and purposes, exactly the same as the road further down. Doesn't make sense to me. I think the Linlark entry point, we know it's at the absolute south end of Linlark, so at the entry of it. It isn't deep in the cul-de-sac. You know, some of the concerns around the street, or around Linlark, around parking and kids not being able to play in the street and things, are irrelevant. I mean, we're down around the corner in the cul-de-sac all the way down that area. They won't travel that far. They simply turn onto Linlark. It will be the first right turn into the driveway, and when you enter into Linlark. You've got an existing road that can be expanded. The development calls for that. Where people will be able to enter and exit in a safe manner. And if safety is really the concern, what safer way than to utilize the existing road? So I find it a little confusing, quite frankly, that what's good for this, or good for the previous one, isn't good for this one. So definitely voting no on one, but I completely support you on number 2.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jordison.
I'd just like to echo what Councillor Ward has said. I too agree with amendment number 2. That's completely suitable. Amendment number 1, the issue that I have with that is I believe that the developers first came in with that proposal to take it off Sooke Road, the entrance off and on Sooke Road, and they were asked by staff to move it on to Linlark. So, we need to get our the situation straight here. You can't keep asking the developers to keep changing their plan. I think they're happy to do whatever makes sense and works the best for the community and for their project. So I'm not in support of the amendment number 1. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jensen.
Yeah, just in reply, I hear you. I really do. I think we're talking apples and oranges if we're talking about the cross section at Hatley Park versus this cross section. That's my opinion, and that's why I'm all right with this. And yes, there might be some inconsistency, but the reality is, I think that there's a much wider cross section here, and I don't think it would be fatal. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I agree that amendment 1 would be a bad idea at this point in time. I agree that amendment 2 is a good idea. And I ask that I could please speak after we've done with the amendments here. I just want to speak.
That'll go back to the original motion.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I get final say here. I am the same way. I don't support amendment 1. Mainly because someone maybe watched this thing called Not Just Bikes or Not Just Towns. And, we're creating a strode again, a street road. And, we shouldn't have these things going off onto the roads. Like, this is bad news that, have the streets, the feeders going onto the roads is the right way. So I do agree with you. I mean, this is myself self-educating on this, but amendment 2, I will fully support. Okay, I will call the vote now. Those in favor of amendment 1. Okay, so you can show the rest of us disagree, opposed. So the motion is defeated. Amendment 1 is defeated. Amendment number 2. All those in favor of amendment 2. And that's unanimous, motion carried. So we'll go back to the original motion as amended. And Councillor Day.
Thank you. For clarity, I just want to say why I won't be supporting this proposal. And the reasons are that this is not a frequent transit corridor. It is too tall, too large, and has negative impacts on the neighboring properties that are not developing at this time. And the residents have shown that they are not in favor of this particular development because of those impacts, including those who had been in favor having recanted that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Seeing no other hands, I will call the question now. Those in favor of the motion as amended? And those opposed? So Councillor Day opposes. Motion carries. Okay, moving on to 9.2, bylaw number 2008, signed bylaw omnibus amendments adoption. Mover, seconder, Grove and Olson. Discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? That's a unanimous, a motion carried. 9.3, a bylaw number 2009, Colwood Main Sewer, LAS enlargement, 530 Lang Home Drive. Adoption. Mover and seconder, David, Councilor Grove and Councilor Jensen. Discussion? Seeing none. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimous. And I'm looking for adjournment, please. Councilor Grove, Councilor Day. Discussion? Any opposed? And that's motion carried. Thank you very much, everybody. And we finished on time. That was a big agenda. Thank you.